Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the first time I walked into Eliza Mercer's apartment. It was late October, the kind of autumn day when the air feels crisp against your skin, but the sunlight still warms you through the windows. The building was old but well-maintained, a 3-story brick structure on Maple Street with copper gutters that had long since turned green. The kind of place where you'd expect families to live for generations, passing down apartments like heirlooms. Apartment 2B had been Eliza's home for exactly 17 days. The lock clicked open under my key, a spare provided by the building manager who stood nervously in the hallway behind me, rubbing his hands together as if trying to warm them despite the building's adequate heating. I pushed the door open slowly, letting it swing on its own momentum, revealing the space inch by inch. "I don't know what to make of it," he had told me on the phone earlier. "She's not answering calls, her rent is paid, but the neighbors, they've been hearing things." The apartment was small but meticulously arranged. A single couch faced a modest television. A bookshelf contained exactly 12 books, spaced evenly apart. The kitchen to my right was clean, almost too clean. No dishes in the sink, no food left out, nothing to suggest someone lived here except for the faint, lingering scent of lemon cleaner and something else. Something I couldn't quite place. I moved through the apartment, my shoes making soft sounds against the hardwood floors. Nothing seemed out of place, yet something felt wrong. The hair on the back of my neck stood up slightly, that familiar sensation that comes not from seeing something frightening, but from sensing something isn't quite as it should be. That's when I noticed them, the shoes. They sat neatly by the door, women's loafers, size 7, brown leather with slight wear on the heels. They weren't placed haphazardly as one might kick off shoes after a long day. They were positioned with precision, perfectly parallel to each other, toes pointing exactly toward the door. "Those aren't hers," the building manager said from the doorway, his voice barely above a whisper. Eliza wore athletic shoes, always said she had foot problems. I knelt down, careful not to touch them, and studied the shoes. They weren't new, but they weren't particularly old either, just used, comfortable, the kind of shoes someone might wear to work in an office. "When did these appear?" I asked, looking up at the manager. "That's the thing," he said, still not crossing the threshold. "They keep appearing. She threw them out 3 times. I saw her do it myself twice, put them in the dumpster out back. Next day there they are again." I stood up and continued my slow journey through the apartment. In the bedroom, the bed was made with hospital corners, the kind my grandmother used to insist upon. On top of the perfectly smooth bedspread sat a neatly folded sweater, pale blue, cashmere by the look of it, women's size medium. "Let me guess," I said, turning to the manager who had finally ventured a few steps into the apartment. "Not hers either." He shook his head. "She only wore dark colors, said bright colors made her anxious." In the bathroom, I found a hairbrush on the counter, several long brown hairs caught in the bristles. Eliza, according to her driver's license photo I'd been shown, had short blonde hair. The refrigerator contained basic essentials, milk, eggs, some vegetables. But on the middle shelf sat a container of homemade pasta sauce that the manager confirmed Eliza wouldn't have made. She ate out or had food delivered, never cooked, said the smells lingered too long in a small apartment. As I completed my initial sweep of the apartment, I began to understand why Eliza Mercer had stopped answering her phone, why she hadn't been seen in 3 days. The apartment was filling itself with someone else's belongings. "When did this start?" I asked, taking out my small notebook, the leather cover soft and worn from years of use. "About a week after she moved in," he replied, watching as I wrote with my fountain pen, the ink flowing smoothly onto the page. First, it was just the shoes. She mentioned it casually, asking if the previous tenant might have left them, but there hadn't been a tenant in this unit for almost 6 months before her. And then a coffee mug in the cabinet she swore wasn't hers, then a scarf hanging on the coat rack. Each time she'd throw the items away. Each time they'd return within a day or two, sometimes in exactly the same spot, sometimes somewhere new. I ran my finger along the edge of the kitchen counter, feeling the cool smoothness of the laminate. Did she ever mention feeling watched or hearing anything unusual? The manager shifted his weight from one foot to another. She said sometimes she'd wake up at night feeling like someone had just been in the room, but the door was always locked from the inside. I checked the locks myself, they're solid, no signs of tampering. I walked back to the living room, noticing now a small framed photograph on the end table that I had missed before. It showed a woman, not Eliza, standing in front of a lake, smiling. The picture frame was old, silver tarnishing at the edges. "Has this apartment had any history?" I asked, knowing how building managers typically dance around such questions. He hesitated just long enough for me to know there was something. "Nothing violent," he finally said, "but the woman who lived here before the vacancy. She lived here for 40 years, died in her sleep right there in that bedroom. Natural causes, heart failure." "Let me guess," I said, "brown hair, about a size 7 shoe, liked to cook." He nodded slowly. Her name was Margaret Holloway, retired school teacher, quiet tenant, never caused any problems. I moved to the window, looking out at the street below where normal life continued. People walking dogs, checking mail, living their lives without any awareness of the subtle wrongness contained in this apartment. "When was the last time anyone actually saw Eliza?" I asked. 3 days ago, she was taking out the trash, looked nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. I asked if everything was okay, and she just said she was tired, hadn't been sleeping well. I turned back to the room, surveying it once more, and no one's been in or out since then. No one with a key except me, and I only came in today because her mother called, concerned when she couldn't reach her. I walked to the closet in the hallway and opened it slowly. Inside were Eliza's clothes, mostly dark colors as the manager had mentioned, pushed to one side. On the other side hung several blouses and skirts in soft pastels and floral patterns, styles that would have been fashionable 20 years ago. Behind them, sitting on the floor of the closet, was a small suitcase. I knelt down and carefully unzipped it, revealing hastily packed clothes, Eliza's clothes and toiletries. A one-way bus ticket to her mother's town, dated 3 days ago, lay on top. "She was planning to leave," I said quietly, "but she never made it out." The manager's face paled. "Should we call the police?" I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the quiet apartment around us. "Yes, but they won't find anything conclusive. No signs of struggle, no evidence of an intruder." "Then what happened to her?" I walked back to the living room where the brown loafers sat neatly by the door, perfectly aligned, waiting for their owner. "Some spaces," I said, choosing my words carefully, "retain impressions, especially spaces where someone has lived for a very long time, where their routines and habits have worn grooves into the very fabric of a place. I looked at the photograph of the woman by the lake again. Margaret Holloway didn't want to leave her home. 40 years is a long time to establish ownership, and some people, their attachment is strong enough that even death doesn't fully sever the connection. You're not saying. I'm saying Eliza Mercer felt unwelcome here from the start. The apartment was reclaiming itself, bit by bit, item by item, creating pressure, psychological pressure. I walked to the door, stepping carefully around the brown loafers, checked transportation records. I suspect you'll find she boarded that bus 3 days ago, left with nothing but the clothes on her back. Left everything else behind rather than stay another night. So she's alive, relief flooded his voice. Most likely, but she won't be back. As we left the apartment, I glanced back one last time. In the still air, I could almost swear I heard the soft shuffling of slippers against hardwood, and for just a moment, caught the faint scent of pasta sauce simmering on a stove that wasn't on. The door closed behind us with a soft click, and I couldn't help but think that somewhere, Margaret Holloway was settling back into her routine, arranging her shoes just so by the door, hanging her clothes in the closet, finally home again after a brief and unwelcome interruption. Some cases don't end with arrests or clear solutions. Some mysteries aren't about who committed a crime, but about the boundaries between this world and whatever comes after, boundaries that are perhaps more permeable than we'd like to believe. I still drive by that building sometimes, late at night when the streets are quiet. Apartment 2B always has a light on, no matter how late the hour. And sometimes, if I look carefully, I can see the silhouette of a woman moving slowly past the window, going about her evening routine in the home she never truly left. Story 2, she looked into the mirror expecting nothing more than her own tired face. But this time her reflection wasn't alone. Another figure stood behind her, smiling, and when she turned around, the room was empty. I remember the first time Emma Montgomery described that moment to me. Her voice was quiet, measured, controlled, but I could hear the undercurrent of fear beneath her careful words. The precinct interview room was silent except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the occasional distant ringing of a phone. Outside, rain tapped against the windows with a soft, steady rhythm that seemed to match the pace of Emma's heartbeat. I thought I was losing my mind, she said, her fingers tracing circles on the cold metal table between us. But then it happened again and again. I nodded, letting the silence stretch between us, comfortable and necessary. My pen made gentle scratching sounds against my notepad as I recorded her statement, the fourth such report in our small town of Linden Grove in the past 3 months. Each victim described the same phenomenon, a stranger appearing in their mirror, visible only in the reflection, never in the actual room. The case file sat beside me, growing thicker with each interview. The manila folder was worn at the edges now, as if the constant opening and closing had aged it prematurely. Inside were photographs, witness statements, and psychological evaluations, all inconclusive, all pointing toward something beyond conventional explanation. Did the figure do anything? I asked, my voice deliberately calm, creating a space where Emma could feel safe, revealing the unsettling details. She closed her eyes, breathed deeply. The fluorescent lights cast shadows under her eyes, revealing sleepless nights and constant vigilance. She smiled, just stood there and smiled, and then Emma's voice trailed off. "Take your time," I said. She started to step forward toward me. In the mirror, I mean, like she was trying to get closer. I felt a familiar chill creep up my spine, the same feeling I had when Derek Williams had sat in that same chair 3 weeks ago, describing an identical experience. Derek, a local business owner with no history of psychological issues. Then Sarah Chen, a high school teacher. Michael Foster, a retired accountant. And now Emma Montgomery, a nurse at Linden Grove General Hospital. None of them knew each other. None had any connection that we could find. Yet each described the same phenomenon with remarkable consistency. The clock on the wall ticked softly as I asked Emma to continue. Outside, the afternoon light was fading, casting the interview room in a gray haze that seemed to blur the boundaries between light and shadow. I thought it was just exhaustion at first, Emma said, her voice steadier now, as if the telling itself was therapeutic. I've been working double shifts at the hospital. The mirror in the staff bathroom is old, the lighting is poor. But then it happened at home, in my own bathroom, in my bedroom mirror. I nodded, encouraging her to continue, while flipping back through my notes from the previous interviews. Derek had seen the figure for 3 consecutive days before he called us. Sarah for almost a week, Michael for just 2 days. The timeline was accelerating. When did you first notice the figure, Emma? I asked. 4 days ago, she said, confirming my growing suspicion. Tuesday night after my shift. I wrote down the date, drawing a small line connecting it to the other victims' timelines. A pattern was emerging not just in the phenomenon itself, but in its progression. And has anything unusual happened in your life recently, before this started? Emma thought for a moment, her fingers still tracing patterns on the table. I found a mirror, she said finally, at the estate sale over on Maple Street, old Mrs. Winter's place. She passed last month and they were selling off her things. My pen paused over the notepad. A cold sensation spread through my chest. An antique mirror, small with a silver frame, inscribed with some kind of pattern around the edges. Emma's eyes widened slightly. Yes, how did you know? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I opened the case file and carefully removed 4 photographs, one from each victim's home. 4 identical mirrors purchased at 4 different times from 4 different places, yet unmistakably the same. This mirror, I said, placing the photographs on the table between us. Is this it? Emma's face drained of color. She nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the images. They all have the same mirror, she whispered. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. The room felt colder now, the shadows deeper in the corners. Emma, I need you to tell me exactly what happened to this mirror. Is it still in your home? She nodded again. In my bedroom. I thought it was beautiful, unique. It is unique, I said quietly, and it's connected to all of this. The investigation shifted that afternoon. What had begun as a series of seemingly unrelated psychological events now had a physical connection, a tangible object linking all 4 victims. The next morning we obtained a warrant to collect each mirror. They sat now in our evidence room, covered with sheets, each tagged and labeled. No one wanted to look at them directly. Even our most rational officers kept their distance. Dr. Landis from the university's anthropology department arrived around noon. She was small, precise in her movements, with silver-rimmed glasses that caught the light as she examined the mirrors without touching them. These are reproduction pieces, she said after almost an hour of careful study. but reproductions of something very old. The pattern around the frame, it's similar to protective symbols found in early European folklore. Protective against what? I asked. Dr. Landis glanced up at me, her expression grave beneath the fluorescent lights of the evidence room. Against entities that were believed to live on the other side of reflective surfaces, she said. In many cultures, mirrors were considered doorways or windows to another world. These symbols were meant to keep whatever lived there from crossing over. A heavy silence filled the room. Outside, clouds had gathered, darkening the afternoon sky and casting the evidence room in premature twilight. So what happens, I asked finally, if those protections fail? Dr. Landis removed her glasses, polishing them slowly with the edge of her shirt. According to the folklore, the entities begin to manifest in the reflection, first as shadowy figures, then more clearly. They attempt communication, and eventually... Eventually what? Eventually they try to cross over. That night I drove to Emma Montgomery's house. The mirrors had been taken into evidence, but I wanted to check on her to make sure she was safe. The neighborhood was quiet, streetlights casting pools of yellow light on wet pavement. Recent rain made everything glossy, reflective. Emma answered the door immediately, as if she'd been waiting. The house behind her was brightly lit, every lamp turned on, eliminating shadows. You've covered all your mirrors, I observed, noticing sheets draped over the hall mirror, the decorative mirror in the living room. She nodded. After what you said today, I didn't want to take any chances. I stepped inside, feeling the warmth of the house envelop me after the chill outside. Emma led me to her kitchen, where she had been sitting with a mug of tea gone cold. Papers were spread across the table, printouts about folklore, mirror superstitions, urban legends. I've been researching, she said unnecessarily, trying to understand. I nodded, taking a seat across from her. Dr. Landis is looking into the origin of the mirrors. She thinks they're modern reproductions, but based on something much older. Emma wrapped her hands around the cold mug, seeking comfort more than warmth. What happens now? She asked. I didn't have a good answer. In 15 years of police work, I'd never encountered anything like this case. There was no protocol, no precedent, no logical next step that didn't involve acknowledging something beyond rational explanation. We're going to find out where these mirrors came from, I said finally. Track the supply chain, figure out why they're appearing in Linden Grove. Emma nodded, but her expression told me she knew, as I did, that conventional investigation methods might not be enough this time. As if reading my thoughts, she spoke quietly. And what if it's already too late? What if whatever was in that mirror is already here? I was about to reassure her when something caught my attention, a subtle change in the atmosphere of the room. The lights seemed to dim slightly, though the switches remained untouched. Outside, the wind picked up, branches scratching against the windows like gentle fingers seeking entry. And then I noticed the kitchen window above the sink. In the darkness outside, it had become a perfect mirror, reflecting the warm kitchen interior. Emma's back was to it, but I could see everything clearly: the table, the papers, Emma sitting across from me. And standing directly behind her chair, almost touching her shoulder, was a figure I couldn't see in the actual room. The figure smiled at me through the glass, raised one finger to its lips in a gesture of silence, and slowly, deliberately, placed its hand on Emma's reflected shoulder. In the kitchen, Emma shuddered suddenly, reaching up to rub her shoulder as if brushing away a chill. I kept my expression neutral with effort, years of detective training helping me maintain composure. The figure in the window was watching me intently now, aware that I could see it, pleased by my recognition. "Detective," Emma asked, noticing my distraction, "is everything all right?" I smiled reassuringly, even as the figure in the window reflection began to move closer to us both, its movements fluid and unnaturally graceful. "Everything's fine," I lied, reaching for my phone to call for backup, "but I think perhaps you shouldn't stay here tonight." As Emma stood to gather her things, I watched the reflection in the window. The figure stood where Emma had been sitting, now fully visible in the reflected kitchen. As I stared, it turned its head to look directly at me, its smile widening to reveal teeth that were just slightly too sharp, too numerous. It raised its hand in a mocking wave, and I realized with sudden clarity that it hadn't just been watching Emma all this time. It had been watching me too, through every reflective surface in this investigation, every window, every computer screen, every glossy photograph in the case file. And now it knew that I could see it. The case remains open. The mirrors sit in our evidence room, carefully covered. Dr. Landis continues her research into their origin, and we've issued a public notice about purchasing antique mirrors. But sometimes, when I'm reviewing case files late at night in the precinct, I feel a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. And if I look up quickly enough at the darkened windows of the office, I catch a glimpse of someone standing behind me in the reflection, someone who isn't there when I turn around. Someone who smiles and waits and watches. Someone getting closer each time I look. Story 3. I remember the first time I set foot in that abandoned apartment building on Mulberry Street. The late October air carried a distinctive chill that seemed to intensify as I approached the condemned structure. My footsteps echoed against the cracked concrete of the empty parking lot, each step sending small vibrations through the soles of my worn leather shoes. The demolition crew had called us the County Investigative Unit just after midnight. Standard procedure would have been to wait until morning, but something in the foreman's voice told me this couldn't wait. The building had been empty for 3 years, he had said over the phone, his voice barely audible over the sound of idling machinery in the background. But there was light coming from a third-floor window. We thought it was kids, you know, but what we found, you need to see it. As I ducked under the yellow caution tape that cordoned off the entrance, I noticed how the air changed, became dense, almost reluctant to enter my lungs. The lobby still held traces of its former elegance, marble floors now cracked and stained, a reception desk covered in a thick layer of dust except for one small section that appeared to have been recently wiped clean. My flashlight beam caught the outline of what looked like fingerprints along the edge. The stairwell smelled of mildew and something else I couldn't quite place, something almost domestic, like cooking oil or laundry detergent, incongruent with a building that should have been completely uninhabited. The wooden banister felt cool and smooth beneath my palm as I made my way up to the 3rd floor, each step creaking under my weight in a building that seemed to be listening to my approach. The foreman was waiting for me in the hallway, his hard hat clutched against his chest like a shield. "It's apartment 3B, he said, nodding toward a door that was slightly ajar. "Nothing's been touched since we found it." I nodded, pulling latex gloves from my pocket and slipping them on with practiced precision. The soft snap of the material against my wrists was the only sound in the otherwise silent corridor. I pushed the door open with my elbow, careful not to disturb any potential evidence on the handle. The apartment was small, a studio with a kitchenette and separate bathroom, but what struck me immediately was how lived in it appeared. A kettle sat on a hot plate, steam still rising from its spout. The single bed was neatly made with fresh linens, a book turned face down on the pillow. A small table by the window held the remains of a simple meal, half a sandwich, a cup of tea that was still warm to the touch. The curtains were drawn, but one had been pulled back slightly enough to allow a sliver of light from a small desk lamp to escape to the outside world. It was this light that had caught the demolition crew's attention, this light that shouldn't have been there. On the desk beneath the lamp lay a notepad with a message written in neat, methodical handwriting. "I told you not to come." I felt a heaviness settle in my chest as I surveyed the room. Everything suggested someone had been there moments before we arrived, yet the building had only one entrance, which had been under observation since the crew discovered the light. No one had left. The impossibility of the situation sent a chill down my spine despite the relative warmth of the room. "Have you checked the bathroom?" I asked the foreman, who remained in the doorway. "No, sir. We called you as soon as we found the note." I moved carefully across the worn carpet, noting how paths had been worn into the fibers from the bed to the kitchenette, from the kitchenette to the desk, from the desk to the bathroom door. Routines etched into the fabric of the space by someone who had been living here, living in a condemned building, living where no one should have been. The bathroom door was closed. I pressed my ear against it first, listening for any sound of movement. Nothing, just the faint drip of a leaky faucet. I turned the handle slowly, feeling resistance as if someone had recently oiled the mechanism. The door swung open smoothly, revealing a small but immaculately clean bathroom. A toothbrush stood in a cup by the sink. A towel hung neatly on a rack. The shower curtain was drawn closed. My hand hesitated as I reached for the curtain. I've been in law enforcement for 15 years, and I've learned to trust the weight that sometimes settles in my stomach before discovering something significant. That weight was there now, pressing down, making each breath more deliberate than the last. I pulled the curtain back in one swift motion. The tub was empty, not just empty of a person, empty of everything. No soap, no shampoo bottles, not even a drain stopper, just porcelain, gleaming white despite the building's state of disrepair, as if it had been recently and thoroughly scrubbed. I returned to the main room and began a more thorough examination. The kitchenette contained basic supplies, a few cans of soup, crackers, tea bags. The mini refrigerator hummed softly. It was plugged in, drawing power from somewhere despite the building supposedly having no electricity. Inside, I found a carton of milk that hadn't expired yet and some fresh fruit. Under the bed was a metal box. Inside were newspaper clippings about the building's condemnation 3 years prior, along with a deed to apartment 3B made out to Alina Winters. I recognized the name immediately. Alina Winters had been the last holdout when the building was slated for demolition. She had refused to leave, claiming the developers were trying to force her out illegally. The case had made local headlines, but then suddenly went quiet. According to official records, Alina had finally accepted a settlement and moved out. The building had been vacant ever since, or so everyone thought. I called in my partner, Detective Morales, and we spent the next several hours documenting everything in the apartment. The more we looked, the stranger it became. There were no photographs in the apartment, no personal mementos beyond the newspaper clippings, no phone or computer, just the necessities for someone to live simply and quietly. And then there was the logistical impossibility of it all. The building had been securely boarded up. Regular security patrols had never reported any signs of habitation, yet someone had clearly been living here, perhaps for the entire 3 years since the building's condemnation. We expanded our search to the rest of the building. Most apartments were in various states of disrepair, peeling wallpaper, water damage, abandoned furniture covered in dust. But on each floor we found small signs that someone had been moving through these spaces: a cleared pathway through debris, a window that opened more easily than it should have, a door whose hinges didn't squeak like the others. In the basement we found what might have been an explanation for the electricity. Someone had tapped into the main power line that ran under the street, creating a crude but effective connection to apartment 3B, but this raised more questions than it answered. It would have required knowledge of electrical systems, tools, and uninterrupted time to complete the work. By morning, we had collected everything of potential evidentiary value, but we were no closer to understanding who had been living in the apartment or where they had gone. We put out an APB for Alina Winters, though part of me doubted that was who we were looking for. 3 days later, I received a call from the records department. They had been going through archived material related to the building and found something unusual. The settlement that Alina Winters had supposedly accepted, there was no record of it ever being processed. No check had been cashed. No new address had been registered. I drove back to the building that afternoon. Construction had been temporarily halted pending our investigation. The place stood silent, a relic of past lives interrupted. I made my way back to apartment 3B, which was now sealed with police tape. As I stood in the doorway, looking at the space that had been someone's hidden sanctuary, something caught my eye. On the desk, next to where the notepad had been, was a small key that hadn't been there during our search. I was certain of it. We had photographed and cataloged everything on that surface. I approached slowly, documenting the anomaly with my phone before picking up the key with gloved hands. It was old-fashioned, the kind used for a safety deposit box rather than a modern door. The next day, we discovered that Alina Winters had indeed maintained a safety deposit box at First National Bank. The bank manager was reluctant to grant access until I presented a court order. Inside the box was a single envelope addressed to whoever comes looking. The letter inside was brief. By the time you read this, I will be gone, truly gone this time. They wanted my home, not because it was valuable, but because of what lies beneath it. Check the basement again. Look behind the old boiler. I've lived with this secret for 3 years. Now it's yours to bear. Alina. We returned to the building immediately. The demolition crew helped us move the ancient boiler, revealing a section of wall that had been recently repaired. It took less than an hour to break through. Behind the wall was a small room that didn't appear on any of the building's blueprints. And inside that room were financial records, boxes of them, detailing decades of money laundering through the property management company that had owned the building. Along with the records were several flash drives containing what proved to be evidence of bribery involving city officials who had approved the demolition. Alina Winters was never found. The most common theory is that she escaped through the network of maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the building, tunnels that connected to the city's older subway systems. Some believe she had been living there all along, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment to disappear and let her discovery speak for itself. Sometimes on nights when I can't sleep, I wonder if she's still out there, perhaps living unnoticed in another condemned building, watching and waiting. And I wonder what I would do if I ever found another note saying, "I told you not to come." The building on Mulberry Street was never demolished. It stands empty still, a monument to secrets kept and finally revealed. But sometimes people in the neighborhood swear they see a light in one of the third-floor windows just for a moment before it disappears again into darkness. Story 4, the cassette tape arrived at my office on a Tuesday. A simple white envelope, no return address, just my name written in careful block letters. The weight of it felt wrong somehow, too light for standard mail, too heavy for just paper. The soft rustle as I slid the plastic case from its paper cocoon was oddly satisfying. I remember the way the afternoon light caught the transparent case, creating small prisms on my wooden desk. I am Detective Samuel Mercer. For 22 years, I've worked cold cases for the Riverdale Police Department, seeking answers that time had tried to bury. Some call it obsession. I prefer to think of it as patience. The tape had no label, no marking to indicate its contents. Only a small thumbprint smudge on the corner of the case. I slid it into the old tape player I keep specifically for evidence like this. Digital records are convenient, but they miss something. The physical imperfections of analog recordings tell stories that ones and zeros never could. The first 30 seconds were silence. Then came the static, soft and constant like distant rain. And then her voice. Hello, who is this? A pause, more static. Hello, I can hear you breathing. Another pause, longer this time. Look, I don't know who keeps calling, but this has to stop. Her voice was calm but tense, a string pulled just shy of breaking. I checked the case file again. Elizabeth Caldwell, 34, reporting harassment by phone. Multiple calls from an unknown number over 3 weeks. Every time she answered, she heard recordings of her own voice saying things she never remembered saying. The police had dismissed it as a prank, perhaps an ex with too much time and technology at their disposal. But then Elizabeth disappeared. 4 days after filing the report, her apartment was found empty. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just absence. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, still plugged in. The coffee maker was mid-cycle, water now evaporated, leaving burnt grounds crusted to the filter. I pressed play again and listened as the tape continued. This is the 5th time today. What do you want from me? The quality of the recording shifted slightly, a barely perceptible difference in the background noise. I adjusted the volume, leaning closer. I know it's my voice you're playing back. How are you doing this? Where did you record me? Another shift in quality, the hairs on my arms raised slightly. Are you watching me right now? The fear in her voice was controlled, contained, the kind that doesn't explode but slowly floods every syllable. I've heard that kind of fear before. It's the voice of someone who's beginning to understand that something impossible is happening. I spent that evening reviewing Elizabeth's case file again. Single, worked as a technical writer for a software company. Regular habits, well-liked by neighbors and colleagues, no known enemies, no psychiatric history, the kind of person who shouldn't simply vanish. Her sister, Caroline, had been the one to report her missing. According to her statement, Elizabeth had mentioned the strange calls during their weekly lunch the Sunday before her disappearance. She wasn't panicked, Caroline had said, just confused and irritated. She kept saying it was like hearing herself from another timeline. The next morning I drove to Elizabeth's apartment building. Modern construction, secure entry, cameras in the lobby and elevators. I had already reviewed the footage from the day of her disappearance, nothing unusual. She had entered at 6:42 p.m. and never left, at least not through any monitored exit. The apartment manager let me in. Everything was as the initial officers had described, neat, ordinary, with that peculiar stillness of a space suddenly abandoned. The coffee maker still sat on the counter, now cleaned by the crime scene team. Her phone, already analyzed by tech, was bagged as evidence. I stood in the center of her living room, absorbing the details. A half-read book on the side table, marked with a library receipt. A small collection of succulents on the windowsill, now withering from neglect. A laptop closed on the desk, its power light blinking slowly like a patient heartbeat. That's when I noticed the answering machine on her landline, an antiquated choice for someone her age, but Elizabeth, according to her sister, had a fondness for things that worked reliably. The small red light was blinking, one new message. I pressed play, expecting perhaps a concerned friend unaware of her disappearance. Static, then. You're already dead. It was Elizabeth's voice, but the tone was wrong, flat, emotionless, like someone reading from a script they didn't understand. I checked the timestamp. The message had been left 3 days after she disappeared. I took the answering machine as evidence and brought it back to the station. Our tech analyst, Rivera, extracted the message and compared it to the voice samples we had from Elizabeth's social media videos and work presentations. It's her, Rivera confirmed, sliding the analysis across her desk. But there's something off about the vocal patterns. It's like it's her voice, but not her speaking style. The cadence is wrong. Could it be synthesized, one of those deep fake voices? Rivera shook her head slowly. Those leave artifacts in the audio spectrum. This doesn't have any. It's a clean recording of her actual voice. That night I dreamed of telephones ringing in empty rooms. I woke at 3:17 a.m., my own phone buzzing on the nightstand. Unknown number. Professional instinct overrode caution. I answered. Detective Mercer, I said, my voice thick with sleep. Static, then a woman's voice, not Elizabeth's. She tried to warn herself. The call disconnected. I spent the next day tracing the call. Another dead end. The number didn't exist in any carrier's records, as if the call had come from nowhere. I returned to Elizabeth's apartment that afternoon, this time with a different purpose. I wasn't looking for evidence of an intruder or signs of foul play. I was looking for evidence of Elizabeth herself, who she was, what she might have been involved in. Her laptop revealed little that we didn't already know. Work files, streaming services, ordinary internet history. But in her email drafts, I found something curious. A message addressed to herself, never sent, dated the day before she disappeared. If you're reading this, then it's already started. The calls aren't recordings, they're real. It's you from the other side. Don't answer the final call. I sat back, the chair creaking softly under my weight. The air in the apartment felt suddenly heavy, as if the oxygen had thickened. That evening, the cassette tape reappeared on my desk. I hadn't brought it back to the office. I was certain I had locked it in the evidence locker. Yet there it was, the same smudged fingerprint on the corner of the case. With a sense of inevitability, I played it again. Elizabeth's voice continued where it had left off. Please just tell me what you want. Static. Who are you? More static than a different quality to the recording, as if the microphone had been moved closer. I'm you, Elizabeth. I'm calling from the other side. The other side of what? The divide between is and isn't, between happened and happening. What does that mean? It means you're already gone, you just don't know it yet. A long pause. You're already dead. The tape clicked off. 3 days later, we found Elizabeth Caldwell, or rather, what was left of her. Her body was discovered in her own apartment, hidden in a crawl space that had been overlooked during the initial search. The medical examiner estimated she had been dead for at least a week before she was reported missing, which meant she had been dead several days before she made her final phone call to herself. The case remains officially unsolved. The calls stopped. The tape disappeared from the evidence locker. I sometimes wonder if I imagine the whole thing, the voice on the answering machine, the call in the middle of the night, the email draft warning herself. But sometimes in the quiet hours when sleep eludes me, my phone buzzes with an unknown number. I never answer. But I listen to the voicemails, to the static that seems to carry whispers just below the threshold of hearing. And I wonder about the divide between is and isn't, between happened and happening. I wonder about voices that call from nowhere, bringing warnings that arrive too late. I wonder if somewhere a phone is ringing for me. Story 5. I remember the first time I noticed something was wrong with the photograph. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in late October. Rain tapped against the windows of my small apartment in Millfield, a gentle percussion that normally would have lulled me to sleep. But that night, as I walked down the hallway toward my bedroom, something made me pause. The old family portrait, the one I'd inherited when my grandmother passed, hung slightly crooked on the wall. I'd always found comfort in those familiar faces. My mother's gentle smile, my father's proud stance, my siblings clustered around them like satellites. It was taken at Lake Willow in the summer of 1987, before everything changed, before the family splintered. I reached out to straighten the frame, my fingers brushing against the cool glass. That's when I noticed it. My mother's smile, always so warm in my memories, seemed different, tighter, forced. I leaned closer, studying the photograph in the dim hallway light. Had her smile always looked that way? Had I just never noticed the tension in her eyes before? Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned, thoughts of the photograph intruding whenever I closed my eyes. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the light perhaps, or the effects of working too many late shifts at the hospital. 3 days later, I noticed another change. My father's hand, which had always rested on my mother's shoulder, now seemed to grip it. His knuckles appeared whiter, his posture more rigid. I removed the photograph from the wall, examining it under the bright kitchen lights. The glass reflected my own face back at me, pale and concerned, but the image beneath remained unaltered from my new perception. I called my sister, Catherine, who lived 2 states away. "Do you still have a copy of that family photo from Lake Willow?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Somewhere in storage, probably," she answered. "Why?" "Could you look for it? I want to compare it to mine." A week passed before Catherine called back. She'd found her copy and everything looked normal. "Same old boring family photo," she laughed. "Dad looking too serious, Mom looking too perfect, and you with that awful haircut." I didn't tell her what I'd been seeing. How could I explain that in my photograph everyone's expressions had shifted, that my little brother's eyes now seemed to follow me across the room, that my mother's smile had completely disappeared? Instead, I did what any rational person would do. I took the photograph down and stored it in the closet, face down under a stack of winter blankets, out of sight, out of mind. That night I dreamed of standing in a dark room, while unseen eyes watched me from every direction. When I woke, the photograph was back on the wall. I stood frozen in the hallway, staring at it, heart pounding in my chest. I lived alone. No one had a key to my apartment. The locks hadn't been tampered with. With trembling fingers, I took the photograph down once more. This time I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the background of the image, partially obscured by a tree, stood a figure I had never seen before. A tall, thin silhouette, faceless against the sunlight. I spent hours examining every detail of the photograph, comparing it to my memories. The figure shouldn't have been there, couldn't have been there. I would have remembered. The next day, I called the only person I could think of who might help, Detective Marcus Reeves, a family friend who had worked on cold cases for the Millfield Police Department before his retirement. I'd known him my whole life. He and my father had been colleagues before Dad died. "Annie," he greeted me warmly when we met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. "It's been too long." I slid the photograph across the table without preamble. "Tell me what you see." His weathered face remained impassive as he studied the image. The lake house, summer of '87, right? A few months before your dad's accident. "Do you see anyone in the background, behind the tree?" Marcus squinted, then reached into his pocket for his reading glasses. "There's someone there, all right. Don't remember seeing them before." My heart raced. "Who is it?" "Can't tell from this. Face is obscured." He glanced up at me. "Why are you asking about this now, Annie?" I told him everything, how the photograph had been changing, how the expressions had shifted, how the figure had appeared where no one had stood before. As I spoke, I could see the concern growing in his eyes, not for the mystery I was describing, but for my mental state. "Annie," he said gently, "photographs don't change. Is everything okay? You've been under a lot of stress since your mother's passing last year." I insisted I wasn't imagining things, but I could see he didn't believe me. Before we parted, however, he promised to look into something. "Your father's accident," he said quietly. There were always questions, nothing official, just whispers. "What kinds of whispers?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. "That it might not have been an accident at all." 3 days later, Marcus called. He pulled some strings, accessed old files. My father's death, ruled an accidental drowning at Lake Willow, had discrepancies in the report. A witness had come forward at the time, claiming to have seen someone else at the lake that day, someone matching the description of the figure in my photograph. The investigation had been closed abruptly. The witness recanted. Life moved on. But now, as I stared at the photograph hanging once again on my wall despite my having thrown it in the dumpster behind my building the previous night, I noticed one final change. My father's face was turned slightly, looking not at the camera, but at the figure behind the tree, and in his eyes was an emotion I recognized instantly. Fear. I understand now why the photograph found its way back to me. Why the faces changed, revealing truths hidden for decades. Someone wanted me to know what really happened that summer day at Lake Willow. Someone wanted me to ask questions that had long been buried. The photograph watches me still from its place on my wall, but now I watch back, and I've begun to dig through old police reports, newspaper clippings, and family records. I've started asking questions that make people uncomfortable, because somewhere in this town, perhaps still walking among us, is the figure from behind the tree. And I intend to find them. Sometimes at night, when the rain taps against my windows and the house settles into silence, I swear I can hear the whisper of paper, as if the photograph is trying to tell me more. as if the truth is right there, frozen in time, waiting for someone to finally see it. Waiting for me. Story 6. I still remember the first time I walked up the cracked stone pathway to the Blackwood estate. The mansion stood silhouetted against the pale November sky, its Victorian architecture somehow both imposing and fragile in the fading afternoon light. As a detective specializing in cold cases, I'd visited many abandoned properties, but something about this place settled into my bones, differently a peculiar heaviness that I couldn't quite name. This place has been vacant for nearly 8 years, my partner, Detective Lane, murmured beside me, her voice barely audible above the whisper of wind through the overgrown garden. She was reviewing the case file, the pages making a soft, rhythmic sound as she turned them. The cleaning crew found the journals yesterday morning while preparing the house for the new owners. I nodded silently, observing how the mansion's windows seemed to watch us approach dark, empty rectangles that nonetheless gave the impression of vigilance. The front door creaked open at the slightest touch, as if the house had been waiting for us. Inside, the air felt thick and stale, carrying the unmistakable scent of abandonment dust, aging wood, and something else I couldn't identify. Our footsteps echoed softly on the marble floor of the grand foyer, where sunlight filtered through dirt-streaked windows, casting long, thin shadows across the room. The journals were found here, Lane said, leading me toward the east wing. I followed her through a corridor lined with faded wallpaper, noticing the rectangular patches of darker coloration where paintings had once hung. The hallway seemed to stretch longer than it should have, playing tricks with perspective. The room where the journals had been discovered was a former study bookshelves lining 3 walls, mostly empty now, and a heavy oak desk positioned near tall windows that overlooked what had once been an elegant garden. A contractor in a gray uniform was waiting for us, his expression uneasy. Found them behind this section of the wall, he explained, gesturing toward a portion of paneling that had been removed during renovations. There was a small cavity that shouldn't have been there. He handed me a cardboard box, 13 journals in total. Didn't read much, but what I saw, well, it didn't make sense. I thanked him, and he seemed relieved to leave us alone with our discovery. Lane opened the box carefully, as though handling evidence from a crime scene which, at that point, we weren't certain it was. Inside were 13 leather-bound journals of various sizes and colors, each tagged with the year written on the spine in faded gold lettering. The oldest dated back to 1967, the most recent to 2016, just before the previous owners had abruptly left. "Let's take them back to the station," I suggested, but Lane was already opening the most recent volume. "Listen to this," she said, her voice dropping to an almost reverential whisper as she began to read. November 3rd, 2016. "Thomas suggested we move the bedroom furniture again today. He thinks it will help him sleep better, but I know the real reason. He's trying to escape the sounds in the walls. I hear them, 2 whispers that sound like our own voices echoing back conversations we've had in private." The journal entries grew increasingly disturbed as we read through them. The previous owners, Thomas and Alina Madigan, had purchased the house in 2015 as their dream retirement home. The first entries described their renovation plans, their excitement. By mid-2016, the tone had shifted dramatically. July 18th, 2016. Found another journal in the attic today from the family who lived here in the 1990s. They experienced the same thing. Their private conversations, arguments, even their whispered fears, all of it written down in a handwriting that isn't their own. Alina thinks I'm losing my mind when I show her, but I can see the recognition in her eyes. She knows. Over the next few days, we methodically worked through all 13 journals. Each one belonged to a different family who had lived in the house, spanning 5 decades. Each described the same phenomenon, discovering journals that documented their private conversations, thoughts they had never shared, fears they had never spoken aloud. The pattern was always the same. A family would move in, discover journals from previous residents, and then begin to notice their own private moments appearing in new entries in a handwriting that matched the previous journals but not their own. Eventually, they would flee, leaving behind their own journal as part of the house's growing collection. What made the case particularly unsettling was the accuracy of the documented conversations. We tracked down 3 of the previous families, now living in different states. Each confirmed the authenticity of the conversations recorded in their respective journals, conversations they insisted had taken place with no one else present in the house. "It's like the house was listening," Thomas Madigan told me during our interview, his hands trembling slightly as he sipped his coffee. "Not just listening, understanding. The journals didn't just record our words, they captured our intentions, our unspoken thoughts." On our 5th day of investigation, Lane made a discovery that shifted the entire case. In the basement, behind a false wall similar to the one where the journals had been found, we discovered a small room containing only a desk, a chair, and a typewriter, a model from the 1960s, the Olivetti Lettera 32. Forensic analysis revealed something impossible. Ink samples from the typewriter matched the ink in all 13 journals, despite spanning decades of entries. More disturbing still, the typewriter contained a half-finished page that continued the journal of the Madigans, describing events that had occurred after they had fled the house, including details of our ongoing investigation. The final paragraph on that page read, "The detectives will find this room today. They'll take samples, run tests, search for fingerprints. They'll discover nothing that helps them understand. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only experienced. You shouldn't be here." We sealed the Blackwood estate as a precautionary measure, citing structural concerns to avoid public panic. The investigation officially remains open but inactive. The typewriter and journals are stored in our evidence room, though I check periodically to ensure no new entries have appeared. I sometimes drive by the house on my way home. It stands empty still, patient in its waiting. In my more rational moments, I tell myself there must be a logical explanation, an elaborate hoax, perhaps, perpetuated by successive owners for reasons I can't fathom. But in the quiet hours before dawn, when sleep eludes me, I remember the weight of those journals in my hands. I think about how the typewriter had been positioned facing the wall, as though the house itself were the one seated at the desk, documenting the lives that briefly interrupted its solitude. And sometimes in those moments, I wonder if somewhere in that house, a new journal has begun, one that bears my name on its cover, recording thoughts I've never shared aloud. The case of the Blackwood Estate journals remains officially unsolved, but I know the truth that I cannot include in any official report. Some houses don't just contain stories, they write them. And we, the temporary occupants, are merely characters passing through pages already composed. You shouldn't be here, none of us should, but the house. The house has always been there, watching, listening, recording, a patient author crafting its own endless narrative. Story 7. The evening light filtered through the dusty blinds of my office, casting long shadows across the case files spread before me. Outside, raindrops tapped a gentle rhythm against the window, a soothing counterpoint to the uncomfortable silence that had settled between me and the woman seated across from me. She clutched a folder of children's drawings in trembling hands, her eyes red-rimmed from what I imagined were days of broken sleep. The ceiling fan above us turned lazily, stirring the heavy air in slow, hypnotic circles. "When did you first notice something was wrong?" I asked, my voice deliberately soft, the kind of tone that invites confession without pressure. I reached for my worn leather notebook, the pages soft from years of similar interviews, similar stories, though none quite like this one would prove to be. Sarah Miller, that wasn't her real name, of course, but it's the one I'll use here, exhaled slowly before responding. Mia has always been creative. Ever since she could hold a crayon, she's been filling our refrigerator with artwork. A fleeting smile crossed her face, then vanished. Always bright colors, always happy scenes, our family, our dog, our house with a smiling sun overhead, the typical drawings of a happy 5-year-old. I nodded, letting the silence stretch, giving her the space to continue at her own pace. The ticking of the old clock on my wall marked time in soft, rhythmic pulses. 3 weeks ago, that changed. Sarah slid a drawing across my desk with reluctance, as if the paper itself might somehow be dangerous. She gave me this at breakfast, asked me if I liked it. The drawing was done in dark pencil, unusual for a child so young. It depicted the rough outline of what appeared to be a kitchen, a table, a refrigerator, countertops, and standing by the sink, a tall, thin figure of a man rendered with surprising detail for a child's illustration. His face was long, his smile unnaturally wide. I asked her who this was, Sarah continued, her finger hovering over the figure but not quite touching it. And she said, so casually, "He says he lives here too." Just like that, as if she was telling me about a character from her favorite cartoon. I made a note in my book, the scratch of my pen against paper oddly loud in the quiet room. And there was no one who could have been this figure. No recent visitors, maintenance workers, family, friends. Sarah shook her head slowly. "We've lived alone since my divorce 2 years ago, just Mia and me." The rain outside intensified slightly, the rhythm becoming more insistent against the glass. I reached for my coffee mug, finding it cold. The ceramic felt smooth against my fingertips as I set it back down. "There were more drawings after this one," I prompted gently. Sarah opened the folder, revealing a chronological progression that sent a subtle chill across my skin. The figure appeared in more and more of Mia's artwork, standing in the hallway, sitting at the edge of what was clearly Mia's bed, waiting at the bottom of a staircase. In each drawing, he was slightly closer, slightly more detailed, his smile never changing. "Did Mia tell you anything else about him?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the disquiet settling in my stomach. "She said his name was Mr. Whisper because he only spoke in whispers." Sarah's voice had dropped to barely above a whisper herself. She said he told her secrets about me, about our house, about the people who lived there before us. I glanced down at my notes at the address Sarah had provided when she first contacted me. The house on Maple Street hadn't made the national news, but in certain circles, my circles, it was known. 3 years ago, before Sarah and Mia moved in, a family of 4 had lived there. The father had suffered from severe depression. The case files were sealed, the newspapers discreet, but the outcome had been tragic. "Did you research the history of your home?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Not until the dream started," Sarah replied, pulling out another drawing. This one showed the figure Mr. Whisper standing over Mia's bed. The child had drawn herself sleeping, unaware of his presence. Mia started having nightmares. She said Mr. Whisper showed her things while she slept. She started drawing what she saw. The next illustration made my breath catch. It showed a man, a different man, more normally proportioned, with a sad face holding what appeared to be a gun. In the background were simplified figures of what might have been a woman and two smaller forms, the previous family. I looked up the house history after this, Sarah confirmed. Found out about what happened there. I thought about moving immediately, but I can't afford to break our lease. And Mia, she doesn't seem frightened. That's what disturbs me the most. She talks about Mr. Whisper like he's her friend. The ceiling fan continued its languid rotation above us. Outside, thunder rumbled distantly, a soft growl of warning. When did you first notice items being moved? I asked, referring to the notes from our initial phone conversation. Sarah's eyes widened slightly. How did you know to ask about that? I offered a small, professional smile. It's a common progression in these cases. She nodded slowly. About a week after the first drawing, small things at first, Mia's toys arranged differently than how I left them. A coffee mug on the counter when I was certain I'd put it away. Then larger things, chairs pulled out from the table. My jewelry box opened, items rearranged. And the writing on the bathroom mirror, I prompted. Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for her phone. She pulled up a photo and handed it to me. In the condensation of what was clearly a bathroom mirror, crude letters spelled out, "She knows I'm here." Mia couldn't have reached that high, Sarah whispered. And that's not how she forms her letters. She's just learning to write her name. I made another note, my pen pressing perhaps a bit harder than necessary against the paper. The case was following a pattern I'd seen before, though each manifestation had its unique characteristics. Have you noticed cold spots in the house, areas where the temperature seems to drop unexpectedly? The hallway outside Mia's room, Sarah replied immediately. Sometimes it's so cold there that I can see my breath, even when the heating is on full. I closed my notebook slowly, deliberately, giving myself time to arrange my thoughts. I'd like to visit your home, Mrs. Miller, observe Mia and her environment, see these locations for myself. The relief on Sarah's face was palpable. When can you come? Tomorrow evening would be best. Activity tends to increase after sunset. I rose from my chair, signaling the end of our initial consultation. In the meantime, I'd like you to do something. Ask Mia to draw what Mr. Whisper wants. Sarah's brow furrowed. Is that safe? Knowledge gives us power, I said simply. Right now, we're operating in darkness. The house on Maple Street looked unremarkable in the fading light of the following day. A modest two-story in a quiet suburb, with neatly trimmed hedges and cheerful yellow curtains visible through the windows. Nothing about its exterior suggested the disquiet within. As I approached the front door, equipment case in hand, I noted the slight waver of the porch light, a common sign, though easily explained by faulty wiring or power fluctuations. Sarah opened the door before I could knock, her expression both relieved and anxious. "Thank you for coming," she murmured, stepping aside to let me enter. The air inside was noticeably cooler than the mild spring evening outside. "Where is Mia now?" I asked, setting down my case in the entryway. "In the living room drawing. She's been quiet all day." Sarah lowered her voice further. "She drew what you asked about, what he wants." I followed her through the house, noting the typical family photographs on the walls, the scattered toys that spoke of a normal childhood. Nothing out of place, nothing to suggest anything other than a single mother and her daughter living a regular life. We paused at the entrance to the living room. Mia sat cross-legged on the floor, crayons spread around her, intensely focused on the paper before her. She was small for her age, with dark curls framing a face of serious concentration. Without looking up, she spoke. "Are you here to talk to Mr. Whisper?" Sarah tensed beside me. I moved forward, crouching down to Mia's level. "I am. Would that be okay with you?" Mia nodded, still not looking up. "He says he's been waiting for someone who can hear him properly." "Can I see what you're drawing?" I asked gently. She pushed the paper toward me. It showed the tall, thin figure of Mr. Whisper pointing at what appeared to be the wall behind the television set. Next to him was a smaller figure, Mia, holding what looked like a piece of paper. "He wants me to find something," Mia said, her voice matter of fact. "He says it's important." I glanced at Sarah, who had gone pale. "I've never moved that television since we moved in," she whispered. "It was too heavy. I paid the movers extra to position it exactly there." The evening progressed with a methodical examination of the house. I took readings with various instruments, electromagnetic field detectors, infrared thermometers, audio recorders, while Sarah watched anxiously and Mia continued drawing in the living room, occasionally speaking in hushed tones to someone I couldn't see. The cold spot in the hallway registered a 15-degree drop from the surrounding areas. The bathroom mirror, when fogged with steam from hot water, revealed faint traces of the previous writing, invisible under normal conditions. Each finding confirmed my initial suspicions, but it was what we found behind the television that truly opened the case. With Sarah's permission and the help of a neighbor she called over, we moved the heavy console away from the wall. Behind it, a section of the baseboard appeared slightly different, newer paint, minor misalignment with the adjoining pieces. "This has been removed and replaced," I observed, running my fingers along the edge. With careful pressure, the section came loose, revealing a small cavity in the wall. Inside was a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, addressed simply to my family. Sarah stared at it, her hand covering her mouth. "Should we open it?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Whatever is happening here, I believe this may be central to it." The letter inside was written in a shaky hand, dated 3 years ago, just days before the tragedy that had occurred in this house. It was a confession, an apology, and an explanation from the father to his family, an explanation they had never received. He detailed his struggles with depression, his feelings of failure, his irrational but overwhelming belief that his family would be better off without him. Most importantly, it expressed his deep love for them and his hope for their forgiveness. A suicide note that had never been found, hidden away from investigating officers and grieving relatives. "He couldn't move on," I said quietly to Sarah as we sat at her kitchen table later that night, Mia finally asleep upstairs. Some part of him remained, trying to ensure his family received this message. When they moved away, he stayed, becoming increasingly desperate to communicate. "And Mia could see him," Sarah murmured, "but why as this, Mr. Whisper figure?" Children often perceive spirits differently than adults might expect. They interpret through the lens of their understanding. I tapped the envelope gently. The question now is what to do with this. The resolution came not through dramatic exorcism or spiritual confrontation, but through simple human compassion. We located the man's widow and grown children, now living in another state. I traveled there personally, letter in hand, explaining only that it had been found during renovations. Their gratitude was profound, their relief at finally having answers palpable. That night, after returning to my hotel room, I received a text message from Sarah. Mia drew a new picture today. Just our family, our house, and a smiling sun. No Mr. Whisper. 2 weeks later, a follow-up visit to the house on Maple Street revealed no cold spots, no moved objects, no mysterious writings. Mia had stopped mentioning Mr. Whisper entirely, saying only that the sad man went away. Some cases end with dramatic revelations or continued mysteries, but sometimes the most profound resolution comes quietly, with a message delivered in a spirit finding peace. As I closed the file on the Miller case, I couldn't help but wonder how many other untold stories remain hidden behind walls, waiting for a child who can see what others cannot, a child who draws shadows, giving form to those caught between worlds, helping them find their way home. Story 8. I remember the first time I stepped onto that empty lot on Willow Creek Road. The morning fog was lifting slowly, revealing patches of overgrown grass and scattered construction materials abandoned, yet somehow not weathered by time. My breath formed small clouds in the autumn air as I ducked under the yellow police tape, notebook in hand. 23 years as a detective in this small town, and I'd never encountered anything quite like this case. The blueprints were simple: 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room, but as the builders worked, they found a hidden room beneath the foundation. Fully furnished, dust-free, and filled with portraits of people who had never lived there. It doesn't make sense, Bill Harmon, the construction foreman, had told me 3 days earlier, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he handed me his coffee. We sat in his truck, the heater humming softly as rain tapped gently against the windows. We broke ground last week. The soil surveys, the permits, everything checked out. Then yesterday, Rodriguez was digging the foundation when his excavator hit something solid. I flipped through my notes now, the pages making a soft whisper against my fingertips. The property belonged to Martin and Sarah Claiborne, a young couple from the city who had purchased the land 6 months ago to build their dream home. They had no connection to the town, no history here. They'd chosen this place for its quiet beauty, the rolling hills that stretched toward the mountains in the distance. The entrance to the room was a simple trapdoor, cut precisely into what would have been bedrock, with stairs descending about 8 feet below ground level. As I made my way down those stairs now, the temperature dropped noticeably. The wooden steps didn't creak, they felt solid, as if they'd been installed recently. At the bottom, I clicked on my flashlight, though I wouldn't need it. The room had electricity. I still remember the moment I flipped that light switch. The soft yellow glow revealed a space approximately 15 feet square. A small sitting room with a leather armchair, a reading lamp, a bookshelf filled with classics: Dickens, Austen, Poe. A Persian rug in deep burgundy covered most of the floor, but it was the walls that made my skin prickle with unease. They were lined with framed photographs and portraits, 12 in total. Men, women, children, all dressed in clothes from different decades. All smiling, all looking directly at the camera, all with the same unusual shade of amber eyes. We checked the county records. Lieutenant Parker's voice played back in my head from our morning briefing. She'd been working the case from the administrative angle while I handled the field work. There's never been a structure on this property, not in the last 100 years of documented history. The land belonged to the Hoffman family for generations, used for farming, nothing more. They sold it to a development company in 2018, who then sold the individual lots to buyers like the Claibornes. I ran my fingers along the spines of the books, real books, not props, well-read with cracked spines and dog-eared pages. I pulled one out, a copy of Great Expectations. Inside the cover, an inscription: "To my dearest Thomas, may you find your way home. December 25, 1887. The ink wasn't faded." The portraits drew me back, I examined each one carefully, making notes on my pad. No names were indicated, but the clothing suggested a timeline spanning from the late 1800s to what appeared to be the 1990s. 12 people, seemingly unrelated except for those distinctive amber eyes. In the center of the display was a larger portrait, a man in his 50s, distinguished, with a neatly trimmed beard and those same amber eyes, particularly intense in his case. He wore clothing from the 1940s, and unlike the others, his expression wasn't a smile, but a knowing gaze that seemed to follow me around the room. On a small desk in the corner sat a leather-bound journal. Its cover was unmarked, the pages inside filled with handwriting so precise it almost looked printed. The entries were dated the most recent from just 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks before the construction crew broke ground. October 3, 2024, the house above will soon begin construction. The cycle continues. They will find us as they always do, and then the questions will begin, but they never understand, they never look deep enough. The truth is in the foundations, not the structures we build above them. I closed the journal, a heaviness settling in my chest. The air in the room felt suddenly thick, charged with something I couldn't name. The portrait seemed to watch me with collective intensity. I approached the central portrait again, the man with the beard. Something about his eyes, not just their unusual color, but the depth in them suggested he knew I would be standing here, looking at him, decades after the portrait was painted. The technical investigation had yielded nothing but contradictions. Carbon dating placed some of the room's materials at over a century old, while others were manufactured within the last 5 years. The electrical wiring wasn't connected to any power grid, yet worked perfectly. The soil surrounding the room showed no signs of excavation, as if the room had somehow formed within the earth itself. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Lieutenant Parker. "You need to talk to Margaret Hoffman," she said without preamble, her voice hushed. "The original landowner's daughter. She's in her 80s now, living in the care facility on Oak Street. She's been asking for the detective investigating the room." "How does she even know about the investigation?" I asked, climbing the stairs back to daylight. "We've kept this quiet." "That's just it," Parker replied. "She called the station this morning before we found the room. She said she'd had a dream about it, said it was time for someone to find it again." The Sunny Pines Care Center smelled of antiseptic and potpourri. Margaret Hoffman sat by the window in her room, a blanket over her lap despite the warmth of the day. Her white hair was neatly styled, her posture straight. She didn't look surprised to see me. "You've been in the room," she said simply as I sat in the chair across from her. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am," I replied, opening my notebook. "I'm hoping you might help me understand what it is, how it got there." She smiled, but her eyes a faded blue. Nothing like those in the portraits held a sadness that made me uncomfortable. "It's always been there," she said quietly. "My father showed it to me when I was a little girl. His father showed him. It's older than our family's connection to that land." "But how is that possible?" I asked. "The county has no record of any structure ever being built there." "Of course they don't," she said with a soft laugh. "The room isn't built, it appears, it waits. It's been appearing on that land for generations, always with the same furniture, the same books, the same portraits, but never in the same exact location twice." I tried to keep my expression neutral, professional, and the people in the portraits. Her gaze drifted to the window. They're the ones who found it before, across time. The room chooses them, shows itself to them. Some try to build over it, around it. Some try to destroy it. It doesn't matter. Eventually it disappears again, taking everything inside with it. and then, years later, it returns. Including the journal, I asked, with new entries. Her eyes snapped back to mine, suddenly sharp. You've read it. Just the most recent entry. Then you know it's aware, it knows you're there. It's watching you now, even as we speak. A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. What is it, Miss Hoffman? What does it want? She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. I don't know what it is, nobody does, but I know what it does. It collects people, observers, people who notice things others don't, people who ask questions like you. She reached out, her thin fingers surprisingly strong as they gripped my wrist. The man in the center portrait, have you looked closely at him? Yes, I said, remembering those amber eyes. Look again, she said, really look. And then check your family albums, detective. I think you already know what you'll find. I left Sunny Pines with more questions than answers, Margaret's words echoing in my mind. That night I dug through old boxes in my attic until I found what I was looking for, a photo album from my father's side of the family. My great-grandfather, a man I'd never met, who disappeared in 1947, leaving behind a pregnant wife and a mystery that had haunted my family for generations. In the yellowed photograph, he stared back at me with amber eyes identical to those in the portraits. Eyes I'd seen every day of my life in the mirror, never realizing their significance. The next morning I returned to the construction site, my mind racing with implications I wasn't ready to face. But as I ducked under the police tape, I found only construction workers resuming their job, the foreman looking confused at my urgent questions. The room was gone. The foundation was solid concrete now, with no trace of any opening, any stairs, any hidden space. The police photographs from the day before showed nothing but dirt and stone where I had stood reading that journal. The evidence logs listed no books, no portraits, no rug. No one remembered the room but me. That was 3 weeks ago. Construction on the Claiborne house continues. From my car across the street, I watch the walls go up, the roof take shape. I've been placed on administrative leave. Concerns about stress, my supervisor said. Hallucinations, possibly. Too many years on the job. Sometimes I think I see a figure watching from what will be the master bedroom window, though there's no floor there yet, no glass in the frames. Just empty space where a man might stand, with amber eyes that catch the light at certain angles. The blueprints are simple 3 bedrooms, a kitchen, a living room. I've studied them obsessively. There's no hidden room shown in the plans, no space unaccounted for, but I know it's there, waiting. And I know somehow that when the house is finished, one of the portraits on that wall will be mine. I've started keeping a journal. I think I understand the rules now. I'll leave it in the room when the time comes, with a new entry for the next person who finds their way down those stairs. October 28, 2024. The house above is nearly complete. The cycle continues. They will find us as they always do. Story 9. I still remember the way the carpet felt beneath my shoes that morning. Plush, absorbing each footfall with a gentle give that spoke of quality, of expense. The Bellevue Grand had always prided itself on these small details. The slight resistance of the brass handle as I turned the key to room 909, the whisper of the heavy door against the frame, the faint scent of lavender from the hallway diffusers giving way to something different. Standing in the doorway, I let my eyes adjust to the half-light. The curtains were drawn, allowing only thin ribbons of morning sun to slice through the darkness. Room 909 looked immaculate at first glance, bed made with military precision, no personal items disturbing the careful arrangement of furniture. The room appeared untouched, yet something felt fundamentally wrong. My name is Daniel Mercer. I've been the manager at the Bellevue Grand for 17 years. In hospitality, you develop a sixth sense for trouble. This wasn't my first time investigating a guest complaint, but it would prove to be unlike any other. The complaints about room 909 had started 3 months ago. Subtle at first, a guest mentioning unusual noises, another requesting a room change without explanation. Then the pattern emerged. Guests would check in but rarely stay the night. The reviews began to mention it specifically. Beautiful hotel, but avoid room 909. Our occupancy rates for that particular room had plummeted to almost zero. I moved deeper into the room, my fingers trailing along the edge of the writing desk. No dust. Housekeeping was still doing their job impeccably. The thermostat read 68 degrees, yet the air felt colder near the bathroom door. I made a mental note to have maintenance check the ventilation. The bathroom revealed nothing unusual. Marble countertops gleamed under recessed lighting. Towels folded and arranged with geometric precision. Not a water spot on the glass shower door. I returned to the main room, methodically checking each drawer, each cabinet, empty, as they should be between guests. The Bellevue Grand had stood for nearly a century in downtown Portland. Grand architecture from another era, modernized with tasteful restraint. We'd hosted politicians, celebrities, and the quietly wealthy who valued discretion above all else. A reputation built over decades could crumble in months with rumors of a haunted room. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the firm resistance of the premium mattress. My weight made no impression on the tightly drawn comforter. That's when I noticed it, a slight irregularity in the pattern, something beneath the pillow. With deliberate slowness, I lifted the pillow. A single photograph lay perfectly centered on the white sheet. I didn't immediately reach for it. Instead, I studied it from above, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The image was unclear from my angle, but something about its composition made my skin prickle with unease. When I finally picked it up, the glossy paper felt cool against my fingertips. Too cool, as if it had been refrigerated. The image slowly came into focus as I turned it toward the light from the window. My breath caught. The photograph showed a bedroom, my bedroom. More specifically, it showed me asleep in my own bed in my own home 15 miles away. The digital timestamp in the corner read 3:17 a.m. last night. I've investigated many incidents in my career: theft, vandalism. Once, even a small fire started by a guest falling asleep with a cigarette. But nothing had prepared me for this violation, this impossible intrusion, my private space captured while I was at my most vulnerable. Detective Sandra Powell sat across from me in my office later that day, the photograph sealed in an evidence bag between us. The afternoon light cast long shadows across her notepad as she finished writing. "And you're certain no one has access to your home?" she asked, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who had heard every possible answer to this question. "Just my sister," I replied. "She has a key for emergencies, but she lives in Seattle." Powell nodded, her pen tapping softly against the leather cover of her notepad. "We'll need to check the hotel's security footage, employee access logs, any maintenance work done in that room recently." "Already pulled those for you," I said, sliding a USB drive across the desk. The detective's eyebrows raised slightly, a small tell of appreciation for thoroughness. The security footage revealed nothing unusual. No unauthorized entry to room 909 in the past week. The last registered guest had checked out after staying less than 2 hours. leaving no luggage behind and paying in cash. The name on the registration, Thomas Weaver, was almost certainly false. Days passed, the room remained vacant, door locked, keycard access temporarily disabled. Detective Powell's investigation moved methodically forward, but with little progress. The photograph had no fingerprints except mine. The paper was common stock available at any drug store. The digital timestamp couldn't be traced to a specific camera. At night, I found myself checking and rechecking the locks on my doors and windows, installing a security system, lying awake, wondering if someone was watching. The invisible violation continued long after the initial discovery. A week later, Powell called. "We found something," she said, her voice unusually tight. "Can you come to the station?" The police station hummed with fluorescent lights and the quiet efficiency of routine. Powell led me to a small conference room where a laptop waited, screen dark. "We've been going through historical records," she explained, settling into a chair that creaked slightly under her weight, looking for similar incidents, nothing at the Bellevue, but when we expanded the search radius. She turned the laptop toward me and pressed play on a video file. Security footage, grainy and timestamped 18 years ago. A different hotel across town. A man in a hotel uniform, a manager, judging by the blazer, entered a room with a master key. His movements were cautious, investigative, just as mine had been. "His name was Richard Carver," Powell said quietly. "Manager at the Westbrook Hotel in 2007. They had complaints about a specific room. He found a photograph under the pillow." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. A photograph of himself. Powell nodded. "In his home, asleep." She paused, allowing the weight of this connection to settle. 3 days after finding the photograph, Carver disappeared, never found. The case went cold. "And now it's happening again," I said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "Maybe, but this time we have something they didn't have then." She clicked to another file. "We found this in the archived evidence. It was dismissed at the time because they couldn't make sense of it." The image showed a hotel receipt. Room 909, the Bellevue Grand, my hotel, dated the day before Carver disappeared. "This doesn't make sense," I whispered. "That would mean that whoever did this to you also targeted Carver 18 years ago, using the same room number." The implications spiraled in my mind. Someone had been planning this for nearly 2 decades. Or worse, someone had continued what another had started. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment seemed amplified. The refrigerator's hum, the settling of the building, my own breathing. At 3:12 a.m. I gave up and made coffee, sitting at my kitchen table with all the lights on. My phone rang at 3:17 a.m. exactly. Unknown number. "Hello," my voice cracked on the single word. Silence greeted me, then barely audible. "Have you checked the guest records, the very first guest?" The line went dead. I was at the hotel before dawn, pulling the original guest ledger from the archive room. The Bellevue's complete records had been digitized only back to 1990. Before that, there were leather-bound volumes, the pages yellow with age, handwriting fading. The hotel had opened its doors in 1926. I carefully turned the brittle pages of the first ledger until I reached room 909's entries, the very first guest. My coffee cup slipped from my fingers, shattering against the tile floor. October 17, 1926, room 909, Thomas Weaver. The same name used by our last guest, the one who had left the photograph. Some patterns repeat themselves across time. Some guests check in without ever truly leaving. And sometimes the past isn't content to remain in carefully archived records. Sometimes it reaches forward, leaving photographs under pillows, whispering through phone calls at exactly 3:17 a.m. Detective Powell is still investigating. The room remains locked, but sometimes late at night, the key card reader on room 909's door activates itself. A green light, access granted to an empty hallway. And sometimes in the deepest hours of the night, I wonder about Richard Carver, where he went, whether he's truly gone, and whether 18 years from now, another hotel manager will find my photograph, left by a guest who checked in but never left. Story 10. The ancient library faced its impending destruction as the workers toiled tirelessly, almost completing the task at hand. Among them, a laborer stumbled upon a concealed latch within a bookshelf. With a soft click, the entire shelving unit swung open, revealing a narrow passageway leading to a hidden chamber. The air within was heavy, stagnant, untouched for decades. Within this secret room, there was no sign of furniture except for a solitary chair bolted to the floor. And etched repeatedly on the wall, a haunting message echoed, "I am still here." The construction foreman swiftly contacted the authorities. What had begun as a routine demolition swiftly turned into something far more ominous. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 20 years of experience, stood at the threshold, his flashlight piercing the darkness, casting an eerie glow on the unsettling message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh instructed the officers present, his voice resonating in the confined space. "No one is to disturb anything until the forensic team arrives." The history of the building provided a captivating backdrop. The library had once belonged to the affluent Harrington family, who had gifted it to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. She had vanished during her final year of college, leaving behind no trace except for her abandoned car found near the woods. Despite extensive searches and interviews, the case had gone cold, with the prevailing belief that she had chosen to start a new life, a theory her family vehemently refuted. As the forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they unearthed hair and fiber samples embedded in the chair. The scratches on the wall harbored minute traces of blood and skin cells beneath layers of dust. Initial analysis indicated that the biological material belonged to a young female who had struggled fiercely within the confines of the room. Walsh gathered a team to delve deeper into the Harrington family's past. A peculiar detail caught his attention. The library had been donated to the community mere weeks after Rebecca's disappearance, a timing that now seemed significant. Further scrutiny uncovered a disturbing revelation. The contractor who had installed the secret room was exclusively engaged by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the family patriarch. Financial records revealed exorbitant payments to this contractor, far beyond standard renovation expenses. Interviews with former library staff unveiled more unsettling facts. None had been aware of the concealed space, although an elderly librarian recalled Maxwell spending extended periods alone in that area after hours, claiming it held historically significant and irreplaceable woodwork. The investigation took a grim turn when DNA analysis confirmed that the biological material from the hidden room matched samples from Rebecca's hairbrush found in her old bedroom. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, painting a chilling picture. Rebecca had not fled but had been held captive behind the bookshelf, potentially by a member of her own family. With a warrant in hand, detectives searched the Harrington estate. In Maxwell's study, they stumbled upon a leather-bound journal hidden in a secret compartment. The journal chronicled months of obsessive entries about his niece, culminating in a bone-chilling final note. She threatened to expose everything. I couldn't let that happen. The room will keep her until she understands. Maxwell, now residing in a coastal retirement community, initially denied any knowledge of the hidden room during questioning. However, when confronted with the journal and DNA evidence, his stoic facade crumbled. She was a threat to everything, he finally confessed, devoid of emotion. Rebecca uncovered my embezzlement from the family foundation. The family name was all I had left. I couldn't let her ruin it. His admission unveiled a gruesome truth. Maxwell had lured Rebecca to the library, confined her, and planned to coerce her into silence. But his scheme went awry when Rebecca attempted to flee. In the ensuing struggle, he had killed her. I panicked, Maxwell confessed. I buried her beneath the floor of the room and sealed it off. Donating the building ensured that section would remain untouched. Subsequent ground-penetrating radar scans confirmed the presence of human remains beneath the chamber's floor. Excavation unearthed Rebecca's skeletal remains, adorned with a silver bracelet her parents had gifted her. The Harrington family witnessed Maxwell's sentencing, finally seeing justice served. Rebecca's mother clutched the bracelet, the sole memento they could lay to rest after all these years. The demolition of the library came to a standstill, the site now a place of remembrance and contemplation. Community members left flowers at the entrance, paying tribute to a life cut short and a truth concealed behind a bookshelf. In a poignant irony, Rebecca's desperate message, "I am still here," scrawled on the walls, had ensured her eternal memory and the eventual revelation of justice. Story 11. The village always kept silent about the dwelling at the edge of the woods. It stood solitary, its windows cloaked in darkness, its porch bowing under the weight of time. No one laid claim to it, no one could recall its builder. But when a band of wanderers strayed too near, they glimpsed something peculiar, names etched onto the wooden siding, carved deep like omens. At the base of the list, fresh and unblemished, was a name unfamiliar to them all. Until a whisper floated from one, voice quivering, "That's mine." The call came late at night. Dispatch logged it as a routine trespassing incident. The voice on the line belonged to Mason Wright, the head wanderer who stumbled upon his name etched into the abandoned abode. The responding officers anticipated nothing beyond juvenile mischief, perhaps a jest among pals, yet what they encountered defied logic. Detective Sarah Keller arrived as twilight draped the forest. Her flashlight beams sliced through the shadows, revealing the weathered front of the dwelling. The names, 27 in total, cascaded vertically down the eastern wall. Some had blurred with age, nearly vanishing against the drab wood. Others remained crisp, as if carved just now. And at the end, Mason Wright, the incision still carrying traces of fresh sawdust. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his exhalations forming mist in the chilly air. "I can't fathom how anyone would know my name." The inquiry commenced with checks on every listed name. The findings sent shivers down the spines of the detective team. Each name belonged to an individual reported missing over the past 4 decades. Some cases had gone cold, others were still active, but all shared a chilling detail: the persons had vanished while hiking alone. Forensic experts photographed each carving, documenting the varied depths, methods, and weathering patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, aligned with a missing persons case from 37 years ago. The records recounted a young lady who ventured into these woods and never returned. Search parties uncovered naught but a lone hiking boot beside a stream. Detective Keller extensively interviewed Mason. His tale remained unwavering. He had no ties to the area beyond this hiking expedition with 4 college comrades. They had selected the path randomly, guided by an online suggestion. Nothing in his history linked him to any of the other names on the wall. The focus of the investigation veered towards Mason's companions. Emily Chen, the group's photographer, shared snapshots taken during their trek. Upon scrutinizing the images, analysts noted a disconcerting sight: a blurred figure lurking in the background of 3 separate photos. The form resembled a tall, lined man, always partly obscured by trees. "We never encountered anyone else on the trail," Emily insisted. "We would have remembered." Detective Keller ordered a sweep of the dwelling's interior. The structure seemed deserted. Dust coated every surface, furniture lay in ruins. Yet in the basement, officers stumbled upon a disturbing tableau. Personal effects of the missing hikers sat arranged neatly on wooden shelves. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, each tagged with a corresponding name from the wall outside. Technicians meticulously catalogued every item. Under ultraviolet light, blood traces emerged on the concrete floor, years of stains someone had tried to erase. Ground-penetrating radar unveiled no bodies buried beneath the house, yet cadaver dogs signaled repeatedly near the back of the property, where the forest thickened. As the inquiry escalated, Detective Keller noted peculiar behavior from Mason Wright. He began recounting odd incidents: whispers outside his flat, footprints in fresh snow leading to his door but not away, shadows observing from the street. The department assigned an officer to guard him, but Mason descended into paranoia. The breakthrough came when researchers unearthed land records buried in county archives. The dwelling had belonged to a reclusive huntsman named Victor Blackwood. Neighbors seldom glimpsed him, recounting brief encounters with an unsettlingly tall, gaunt man who shunned conversation. Blackwood vanished without a trace 15 years ago, his disappearance left unexplored. Detective Keller secured a warrant to delve deeper into the surrounding forest. The search squad uncovered a network of rudimentary hunting blinds, strategically situated along well-trodden hiking paths. Within one, they found a journal brimming with meticulous observations, accounts of hikers, their paths, gear, and routines. The script matched samples from Victor Blackwood's scant documents. The entries grew increasingly unsettling. Early pages detailed hunting strategies for animals. Later entries portrayed humans as quarry: their behaviors, vulnerabilities, and techniques for their acquisition. The final pages detailed stalking each victim on the wall, including intricate depictions of how he chose his prey. The pursuit of Blackwood mobilized across multiple jurisdictions. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scanned the forest. Tactical units combed every cave and gorge, yet no sign of the suspect surfaced. Mason Wright ceased answering calls. Officers dispatched to his flat found the door unlocked, the rooms deserted. On his bedroom wall, freshly carved, was a solitary line: "The hunter becomes the hunted." The hunt for Mason persisted for weeks to no avail. Then, during a secondary sweep of Blackwood's dwelling, forensic technicians unearthed a horrifying find. Concealed behind a false wall in the basement, they discovered a small workshop containing woodworking tools, jars of wood preservatives, and a freshly carved piece of wood bearing a new name not yet affixed to the exterior wall. Detective Keller recognized the name instantly. It belonged to the lead forensic technician who had processed the house during the initial investigation. The technician had called in sick that morning and was unreachable by phone. Authorities established a continuous surveillance ring around the house. Camera systems recorded every approach. Motion sensors monitored for intrusions. The trap was set. 3 nights later, sensors triggered an alert. Security footage captured a figure emerging from the forest, impossibly tall and thin, moving with unnatural grace. The figure advanced towards the house directly, seemingly unperturbed by the surveillance. As tactical teams closed in, the cameras briefly lost connection. When the system reconnected, the figure had vanished. The dwelling remains under constant watch to this day. Mason Wright and the forensic technician were never located. The investigation persists, with fresh resources allocated as akin disappearances are reported in other wooded regions. The names on the wall have morphed into lore among law enforcers. Some officers refuse to utter them aloud, others steer clear of the case entirely. And local wanderers now steer clear of the dwelling, fearing that mentioning it might somehow add their names to that dreadful list, the names unspoken. Story 12. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop where time seemed to linger and mysteries whispered in the steam of black coffee. For years, a man had made this place his sanctuary, same table, same order, same silent contemplation. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a secret whispered only by the wind. Then one day the routine shattered like porcelain hitting the floor. The man didn't arrive. Concerned, the police investigated, finding only a wallet abandoned on his usual seat. Inside lay a driver's license with a face but no identity, no history, just an empty void where a name should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the enigma, her fingertips tracing the cold metal table as she studied the security footage. The man, now known as John Doe in the enigmatic case, appeared ordinary on screen. Average in height, unremarkable in features, clad in a navy coat with a weathered messenger bag. Yet his vanishing act defied logic and reason, leaving ripples of unease in its wake. "Replay it," Mercer instructed, her voice a soft command in a dimly lit room. The footage unveiled John's entrance during the bustling morning hours. He ordered his usual black coffee, no sugar, and settled at the secluded corner table adorned with a leafy plant. Writing in a notebook, he gazed out the window, a silent observer of the world. Then, in a blink of an eye, he vanished into the shadows of the restroom hallway, never to return. "Inspect the restroom footage," Mercer urged. But the specialist's reply was a haunting echo of impossibility, no trace of John entering, as if he had dissipated into the ether. Back at the station, Mercer sifted through the enigma within the abandoned wallet. A photo matched the mystery man, yet the personal details were mere echoes of existence. Credit cards bore no names, only enigmatic numbers leading to nowhere. Neatly stacked cash, a recent coffee shop receipt, and a solitary business card with a ghostly phone number etched in faint ink. Upon dialing the number, silence greeted Mercer, interrupted only by the rustle of unseen pages. The enigma deepened, shrouded in whispers of the unknown. The barista's recollections offered little solace in the midst of the enigma. He seldom spoke, but his presence was gentle. "Always alone, lost in his writings," she murmured. The notebook, a cryptic maze of symbols and sketches, confounded even the sharpest minds. Architectural designs of unknown buildings, encrypted codes dancing across the pages, a puzzle without a key. As the investigation spiraled, Mercer's keen eye caught a flicker in the security footage, a momentary glitch in time when John entered the shop. The anomaly beckoned her to the coffee shop once more, to unravel the threads of the inexplicable. A curious mirror, ancient and ornate, hung between realms within the shop. Symbols etched upon its frame mirrored those in John's notebook, hinting at a connection lost in time. The mirror's touch whispered secrets, its warmth a cryptic invitation to the unknown. And behind its glass facade, a hidden chamber awaited, revealing a cache of identical wallets, a journal scribed with echoes of forgotten timelines, all bearing the mark of John Doe. A journal entry spoke of experiments in temporal realms, of windows between realities, of a nexus within the coffee shop. The mirror, a gateway between worlds, a threshold waiting to be crossed. As whispers of John Doe's presence echoed through the city, the fabric of reality seemed to tremble. Reflections danced independently, phantom images of a man lost in the shadows of existence. An elderly woman, Margaret Keller, emerged from the shadows of secrecy, unveiling the truth behind John Doe's enigma. Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind lost to the sands of time, a physicist who dared to breach the boundaries of reality. The coffee shop, a convergence of past and present, stood upon the ashes of Weston's vanished laboratory. The mirror, a portal to the unknown, shattered the confines of perception. In the final revelation, Mercer glimpsed the fractured truth in the shattered mirror, two versions of the same man, existing in harmony and discord. The note left amidst the shattered glass prophesied the end of an experiment, the closure of a window into the unknown. A plea echoed through time and space, a warning unheeded. The case of the man who slipped through reality's grasp remained a haunting enigma, shrouded in the mists of forgotten whispers. The coffee shop faded into memory, the mystery buried beneath its crumbling walls. Daniel Weston's legacy lingered in the shadows of the city, a ghostly presence etched in the walls of time. Detective Mercer's pen danced across pages, mirroring the echoes of a man lost to the winds of change. And as night fell upon the city, the fragment of an antique mirror whispered secrets to the stars, its surface shimmering with echoes of a reality lost and found. Story 13, she wiped the steam off the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Yet a sense of unease crept in. Her features seemed normal, her attire unchanged. However, the longer she peered, the more a flicker caught her eye. A subtle movement, not of her own making. When she turned away, her reflection remained still observing. This marked the unsettling beginning of Rebecca Thorne's perplexing journey. Living in solitude within a modest apartment in a serene suburban enclave, Rebecca was known as meticulous and reserved, interacting politely with her neighbors while keeping to herself. Her occupation as a data analyst for a medium-sized firm shaped her life with routine and precision. No one would have foreseen she'd be at the heart of a mysterious criminal puzzle that would grip a community for years to come. The initial signs were subtle. Objects in Rebecca's home shifted, inexplicably rearranged but not missing. A coffee mug on a different shelf, books shuffled, her toothbrush misplaced. She brushed these occurrences off as mere lapses, attributing them to long hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh lights, straining her eyes. Detective Marion Shaw was alerted after Rebecca, enduring weeks of such disturbances, finally reached out to authorities. Initially deemed non-criminal, Shaw felt it might be more suited for mental health services than police intervention. The complaint was documented but filed away among low-priority cases. There was no concrete evidence, Shaw would later testify. No forced entries, no stolen items, just a woman feeling a sense of wrongness in her own home. The pivotal moment unfolded in the bathroom. During her subsequent meeting with law enforcement, Rebecca recounted in vivid detail how her reflections seemed to move independently, a sensation of being watched even in solitude. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had installed aimed at her front door. The chilling video depicted Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, followed 20 minutes later by someone identical to her using a key to enter her residence. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of manipulation but found none. The intruder moved and dressed exactly like Rebecca, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca had already swiped into her office building on the time-stamped workplace footage. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with uncanny precision." The probe intensified. Fingerprints within the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's. No foreign DNA was discovered. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's routine comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned a peculiar incident where she greeted Rebecca upon her return one evening but received no response, a deviation from her usual behavior, though not alarming. Rebecca started documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor changes escalated. Unfamiliar food vanished from her fridge. Her computer displayed searches she hadn't initiated. Most unsettling were the selfies on her phone resembling her but taken without her knowledge. In some, her expression appeared subtly amiss, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I feel like I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is trying to make me believe so." The breakthrough came with a pattern detected in the security footage. The doppelganger only entered during specific appointments when Rebecca was away: therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined activities with predictable durations. "Someone intimately knows your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's targeted surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist theorized they were dealing with a fixation case, an individual fixated on becoming Rebecca, living her life, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such cases were rare but documented in psychological studies. The focus shifted when Rebecca mentioned a former coworker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca unsettling emails, one stating, "We could be identical. Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." With a warrant to search Lily's home, Detective Shaw's team unearthed a chilling reality. One room was transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls adorned with countless photos of Rebecca and her daily routines, socializing, shopping, all taken unbeknownst to her. The closet housed duplicates of Rebecca's attire, makeup mirroring her preferences placed on a vanity, alongside detailed notes on her behaviors, speech patterns, and daily rituals. Most disturbing were the practice videos, Lily imitating Rebecca's walk, gestures, and expressions. The progression was evident, from clumsy mimicry to near-perfect replication. "She desired to be me," Rebecca whispered upon seeing the evidence. "She wasn't just mimicking me, she was erasing me." Advanced tools for key duplication and electronic access card replication were uncovered, along with an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar predicting her schedule. However, Lily's ultimate motive eluded investigators. Journals found in her residence contained erratic entries, shifting between first and third person, often referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent chills down their spines. "Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger version will prevail." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Signs of a rushed departure were evident in her home drawers left ajar, technology missing. A nationwide search was initiated. Rebecca was placed under protective custody, relocated to a secure hideaway under continuous surveillance. For 3 weeks, every place associated with her past life was monitored vigilantly, yet Lily never reappeared. The case took a chilling turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca was sighted entering the building despite being on leave. Surveillance footage confirmed it. A perfect doppelganger accessed the premises using a valid ID card, settling at Rebecca's former desk, sifting through files for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained concealed in a secure location. The truth became evident. Lily hadn't fled. She had made her move, assuming Rebecca's identity while the genuine Rebecca remained in seclusion. The case remains unresolved. Lily Winters remains at large. Rebecca Thorne chose not to return to her previous life, crafting a new identity in an undisclosed setting. Detective Shaw keeps a photo on her desk, two strikingly similar women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. Sometimes she scrutinizes their features, seeking the nuances that set them apart. The truly chilling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not merely resembling or sounding like someone. It's the desire to become them so intensely that they obliterate themselves in the process. Our identity isn't just what we exhibit to the world, it's what we safeguard most fiercely. And sometimes we only grasp its worth when someone attempts to steal it. Story 14. The weathered envelope exuded a sense of age, its once white edges now tinged with a soft yellow hue, yet the stamp on it appeared fresh, as if it had just been sent out into the world. With practiced care, the detective unfolded the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper inside. The message it bore was hurriedly typed in an uneven, almost frantic font. "I am sorry for what I did." As the detective gingerly handled the paper, a dampness seemed to cling to it, carrying with it a faint metallic scent that lingered in the air. It was only upon closer inspection that a reddish smear along the bottom edge caught their attention. This was no ordinary ink stain. Detective Sarah Morgan wasted no time in securing the letter in an evidence bag, her gloved fingers moving with precision honed by years of experience. The forensics team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The reddish hue was indeed human blood, a chilling echo of an unsolved homicide that had haunted the department for far too long. The victim, a promising young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, her body riddled with stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes scattered like fallen leaves, hinting at a connection between her brutal murder and the story she had been fervently pursuing. Despite tireless efforts and countless leads, the case had gone cold, leaving a shadow of uncertainty in its wake. And then, like a whisper in the night, the letter had arrived at the police department, bearing no name, just a simple address: Homicide Division. The scant fingerprints on the paper and envelope offered little in the way of clues, only hinting at a careful sender who had taken precautions. But it was the postmark that breathed new life into the investigation, a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the ominous letter at the heart of the board, adorned with haunting crime scene photographs and faded timelines. "This changes everything," she murmured, her voice barely above a hush. "Our perpetrator shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this relentless pursuit of justice, regarded the letter with a thoughtful gaze. "Or perhaps it's a facade," he suggested softly, "a ploy to toy with us to obscure the truth in shadows." The forensics team's meticulous examination revealed that the typewriter responsible for the letter bore unique markings from a bygone era, a relic of the past now thrust into the present. While rare, such a typewriter was not beyond reach. The investigators embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique aficionados and collectors far and wide, chasing a ghost from another time. As the tendrils of the investigation unfurled, they delved into Rebecca's world, a tapestry woven with threads of determination and grit. Her pursuit of truth had led her down a treacherous path, shining a light on corruption festering in the shadows. A wealthy family entwined with local politics stood at the nexus of her final investigation, their secrets veiled in layers of deceit. Interviews with Rebecca's loved ones unearthed whispers of a shadow stalking her, a specter of paranoia trailing her every move. Michael Barnes, her once devoted boyfriend, bore witness to her unraveling fears. With each passing moment, the facade of normalcy crumbled, revealing truths better left buried. And then, like a haunting echo, a second letter materialized, a mirror image of the first in its eerie composition. The words etched upon it painted a chilling portrait of betrayal and regret. She knew too much about the family, about the inheritance, about what happened to the old man. I never meant for it to go that far. The trail of breadcrumbs led the investigators to the opulent mansion of the deceased patriarch, a den of secrets cloaked in opulence. Richard, the eldest son, stood at the epicenter of their scrutiny, his polished demeanor masking a well of deception. Antique typewriters whispered tales of bygone eras, their keys stained with the ink of treachery. A revelation awaited in the form of microscopic fibers clinging to the envelopes, fibers that bore the signature of custom stationery reserved for the youngest daughter, Eleanor. A web of deceit unfurled, linking Richard to the sinister machinations that had claimed Rebecca's life. A search of Richard's abode unearthed a chamber of horrors, a shrine to a life cut short. Newspaper clippings chronicled Rebecca's downfall, surveillance photos capturing her every move. And there, nestled in the shadows, lay the vintage typewriter that had birthed the letters, its keys tainted with the blood of the innocent. The final act played out in a symphony of betrayal, as bank records laid bare the transactions that sealed Rebecca's fate. Michael's confession hung heavy in the air, a damning testament to the corrosive power of greed and deception. "She told me the truth," he whispered, his voice a hollow echo of remorse. "I betrayed her trust, and for that I can never atone." And in a twist of fate, Eleanor emerged as the harbinger of justice, her clandestine recording laying bare the malevolent pact between Richard and Michael. Silenced permanently, Richard's chilling words echoed through the courtroom, sealing his fate in a dance of shadows and light. As the gavel fell, a shroud of silence enveloped the courtroom, the weight of justice settling like a heavy mist. Rebecca's parents, mere shadows of their former selves, found solace in the hollow victory, a bittersweet salve for a wound that could never fully heal. The blood-stained letters lay dormant in evidence storage, a silent testament to the fragility of secrets and the enduring legacy of those who seek truth in the shadows. And in the stillness of the night, the typewriter whispered its final confession, a somber reminder that even the darkest of deeds cast a long shadow, one that can never be erased. Story 15, the mysterious package arrived without a return label or tracking number, just a damp cardboard box on a quiet morning. It wasn't intended for Sarah Miller. The name on it was unfamiliar. She hesitated, knowing she should have left it unopened on the porch, but curiosity tugged at her, urging her to unravel the mystery within. Gently peeling back the tape, she anticipated mundane contents like books or clothing. Instead, she discovered a VHS tape with a single sticky note that simply read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic cassette in her hands, feeling its weight press against her palms. It seemed heavier than it should be, almost as if it carried the burden of forbidden knowledge. Her fingers traced the edges of the worn tape, sensing the urgency in the handwriting on the note. Outside, the suburban neighborhood hummed with everyday life, a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the drone of a lawnmower. Bringing the package inside, she placed it on her kitchen counter, her thoughts swirling with uncertainty. The name Daniel Whitaker meant nothing to her. She had never received mail for him in the 4 years she had lived there. The previous residents, the Johnsons, had long moved away. Despite her misgivings, Sarah felt drawn to the tape, a mystery cloaked in black plastic. Against her instincts, she inserted the tape into her old VCR. The screen crackled with static before clearing into a dimly lit room. A man sat in a chair, his face initially obscured by shadows. As he spoke, introducing himself as Daniel Woodacre, the camera revealed his weary features, haunted by sleepless nights and unrelenting vigilance. He denied guilt in a murder, claiming his innocence despite damning evidence against him. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in the enigma of Daniel Woodacre when multiple recipients received identical tapes from him. Each message painted a desperate picture of a man wrongly accused of a heinous crime. The investigation into Catherine Walsh's murder took a sharp turn as Ramirez delved deeper into the tangled web of deceit surrounding the case. Catherine Walsh's involvement in exposing a pharmaceutical company's cover-up added a layer of complexity to the investigation. As Ramirez uncovered discrepancies in the evidence and witness testimonies, she realized that Woodacre's tapes held the key to unraveling the truth behind the sinister plot. Sarah Miller received a second package containing incriminating documents that corroborated Woodacre's claims. With the help of other tape recipients, Ramirez traced Woodacre's footsteps, leading them to a storage unit where irrefutable evidence of the conspiracy was uncovered. Justice was served not through dramatic arrests, but through the quiet accumulation of truth. As Woodacre emerged from hiding, cleared of all charges, he and Sarah shared a moment of reflection on her porch. The unexpected connection between them highlighted the fine line between justice and manipulation. The VHS tapes, symbols of hidden truths, served as a reminder that sometimes the path to justice begins with a package delivered to the wrong address. The Story 16, The Whispering House. She desired to give the nursery a fresh coat of paint before the baby's arrival. The walls wore a faded blue hue, a color that whispered of bygone tales hidden within its depths. As the white paint swept over the first layer, a mysterious revelation emerged from beneath faint letters at first, then gradually sharpening into clarity. A cryptic message etched beneath the surface, "Don't let it hear you," her breath hitched in her throat. Stepping back, her eyes caught sight of something unsettling, tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, positioned too high for any child to have reached. The unearthing within the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home mere months ago at a surprisingly low price. The real estate agent had vaguely mentioned minor cosmetic issues, omitting any reference to the property's shadowed past. Detective Sarah Klein, with notebook in hand, pressed the doorbell. A woman, her pregnant belly pronounced beneath paint-speckled overalls, answered. Dark circles rimmed her weary eyes, telling of sleepless nights. The detective observed the woman's quivering hands as she recounted the discovery of the message and handprints. The previous owners vanished abruptly, the woman divulged. Neighbors claimed they departed in the dead of night. No moving truck, just essential belongings hastily packed into their car. Stepping into the historic abode, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on aged floorboards. Standing in the nursery, she scrutinized the partially painted wall. The enigmatic message lingered beneath the abandoned white paint. Beside it, 5 small handprints pressed into the wet surface, positioned at the height of an adult's shoulder. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into records on the property. The house had changed ownership 8 times in 3 decades, a remarkably high turnover rate. Each family had resided for less than 2 years. More disquieting were the child welfare reports linked to 3 of those families. Children spoke of whispers from the walls and a sense of being watched while they slept. The detective delved further, obtaining construction records and historical documents. The house had once belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who ran a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings referenced 5 children who had vanished from her care. Authorities had presumed the children had fled, a common occurrence for orphans of that era. Upon Eleanor's passing, workers renovating the house stumbled upon a sealed room hidden behind the nursery wall. Inside lay children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and clothing, but no remains. Detective Klein interviewed past residents, piecing together a disturbing narrative. Each family with children recounted peculiar events, toys rearranged overnight, childish laughter echoing through empty corridors, and crayon drawings materializing on walls. Most dismissed these incidents as flights of fancy until the writing surfaced. The message varied slightly in each account. Don't let them find you. Don't make a sound. Don't let it hear you. Consistently the same penmanship, unfurled only during nursery repainting. A forensic linguist analyzed photographs of the writing, confirming its match to samples from Eleanor Blackwood's journals. More chilling were the handprints uniform in size and placement over decades, despite different children inhabiting the home. The investigation veered into the shadows when the detective persuaded the current owners to permit ground-penetrating radar in the basement. The technician pinpointed anomalies in the readings, 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each resembling a child's size. Breaking through the concrete unveiled a grim revelation: 5 small sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis indicated the children had perished during Eleanor's tenure in the house. Each child wore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had purportedly fled. The detective ordered the nursery drenched in luminol. Within the darkness, handprints gleamed on every wall, hidden beneath layers of paint, invisible to the naked eye. Hundreds of them at varying heights, as though the children had sought to escape. Eleanor's journals, unearthed from county archives, laid bare her twisted beliefs. She deemed orphaned children possessed a unique spiritual essence. By confining them in the concealed room, she aimed to tap into their life force to prolong her own existence. The children had etched their warnings into the wall with nails and bits of metal, hoping future occupants would unveil their tragic end. The case concluded with the proper burial of the 5 victims. Their names were finally recorded not as runaways, but as victims of foul play. The house stood desolate thereafter, the expectant couple refusing to return even for their belongings. Detective Klein penned her final report, enclosing photographs of the luminol-illuminated handprints and hidden message. She noted that while justice had been served for the original victims, an inexplicable presence lingered within that house, reaching out through layers of paint and time. The nursery walls were raised during cleanup, yet workers reported hearing children's whispers emanating from the debris. None dared return once their shifts ended. The house was ultimately condemned, another unsolved case archived in a dusty cabinet, a tangible conclusion, but spiritual enigmas left unanswered. The detective retained one photograph from the investigation, 5 luminol handprints shimmering in the darkness, a haunting reminder that some crimes leave indelible marks beyond the reach of fresh paint. Story 17. The apartment had sat silent for months, a forgotten space waiting to tell its tale. The new tenants entered with low expectations, prepared for nothing more than a layer of dust and perhaps a few forsaken pieces of furniture. Yet one door resisted their gentle nudges. It stood locked, a barrier to secrets hidden within. When the landlord finally coerced the stubborn door ajar, the tenants braced themselves for the usual sight of old coats or discarded odds and ends. But what greeted them chilled the very marrow in their bones. The walls of the closet were marred with deep, ragged scratches etched into the wood with a fervor that spoke of desperation. And nestled in the corner, a relic of the past, an ancient flip phone, its battery long extinguished, save for the single unread message that still flickered on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator of unsettling scenes, felt a shiver crawl down her spine at the sight before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unnerved her, but rather the haunting implication behind those claw marks, a soul once trapped within that confined space, battling against invisible foes. "We need forensics on site immediately," she directed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the haunting scratches through his lens. "And fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the phone glowed ominously. "I know what you did." The landlord, a fidgety man perpetually plagued by clammy palms, stammered that the last tenant had vanished without a trace, leaving overdue rent in their wake. "A young woman kept to herself, left about 6 months ago," he muttered, avoiding the closet's gaze. "No trouble caused." Forensic analysis unveiled a tapestry of blood intertwining with the scratch marks on the walls. Most samples aligned with a single individual, presumably the former tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman reported missing when she unaccountably ceased her work duties. Yet 2 distinct DNA signatures emerged. One remained a mystery to the databases, a phantom identity. The other belonged to a man supposedly deceased for 2 long years. "This defies reason," Shaw murmured, her gaze fixed on the perplexing lab results. Derek Mercer, a felon marked by assault 5 years prior and declared dead in a tragic car crash, now left his genetic imprint on the closet's confines alongside Emma's. The apartment whispered of a life-interrupted unopened mail, a forsaken coffee mug in the sink, a meticulously arranged bed. Emma's phone records wove a narrative of dwindling connections, regular calls to her sister dwindling into silence, punctuated by a flurry of unanswered calls from an unknown number prior to her disappearance. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name given, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store captured Emma's return to her building one fateful night, shadowed moments later by a man sporting a baseball cap, his features strategically veiled from the camera's lenses. The puzzle pieces began to align when partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer surfaced on the closet's inner doorknob. He staged his demise, Shaw deduced, but to what end and what tether binds him to Emma? The enigmatic DNA sample unveiled a link to another missing person, Lynette Porter, who vanished 3 years earlier. Although her trail had grown cold, eyewitnesses recalled a woman resembling Lynette visiting Emma's abode on multiple occasions. Shaw pieced together the narrative through meticulous scrutiny of traffic camera footage, revealing a pattern of Derek Mercer's mother's vehicle making recurrent visits near Emma's residence, a silhouette akin to Derek spotted behind the wheel. The pursuit led the investigators to a secluded property owned by Mercer's kin. Behind sturdy cellar doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter alive yet emaciated, confined in conditions mirroring Emma's harrowing ordeal within a closet. "He forced me to watch," Lynette murmured, her eyes vacant with trauma. "He wanted me to witness the fate of those who dared to flee." Evidence mounted a diary chronicling Mercer's obsession with dominance, photographs of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and damning footage of Mercer coercing Emma into the closet, his voice dripping with malice. "She thought she could expose me," his words echoed in the recording. "No one reveals my truths." The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned jurisdictions. While law enforcement combed the shadows, forensic profilers sketched a chilling portrait of Mercer's psyche. His appetite wasn't merely for bloodshed, it craved the protracted agony of entrapment, the spectacle of hope withering in claustrophobic confines. Upon Mercer's apprehension at a bus terminal, armed with a new identity and a ticket to a distant shore, his backpack harbored chilling tools: a roll of duct tape, a serrated blade, and a news clipping chronicling Emma's vanishing. During interrogation, Mercer exuded a disconcertingly serene demeanor. She sent that message to herself, he claimed of the phone's ominous text. She yearned for discovery, but she didn't merit salvation. The trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate ruse to fabricate his demise, exploiting a vagrant's dental records that matched his physical attributes. For 2 years, he prowled incognito, targeting women who mirrored his initial victim. Emma's remains remained elusive, the forensic evidence hinting at her eventual demise within the closet, her frantic pleas etched in vain upon unyielding walls. Her final message, a silent cry for justice, was a text she clandestinely sent from Mercer's phone while he slumbered, a digital breadcrumb left for the truth seekers. The jury swiftly deliberated, delivering a resounding guilty verdict across all indictments. As the judge intoned a life term devoid of reprieve, Mercer's countenance bore a faint smirk, as though the outcome harmonized with a private symphony only he comprehended. At the sentencing, Lynette Porter's voice resonated within the courtroom. He entrapped us in narrow confines because his mind dwells in shadows, but while he withers in his cell, I'll stand beneath the sun's embrace. The case reshaped investigative protocols for missing persons inquiries, emphasizing the scrutiny of relational dynamics and rental property histories. Detective Shaw enshrined the closet's door from Emma's abode within her office, a silent testament that horror isn't always painted in blood, but etched in the desperate marks of a soul fighting for survival. Story 18, the rundown hotel stood quietly, a haven for fleeting guests seeking respite for a single night. With a wearied gaze, the clerk handed her the key, a hint of mystery in his eyes. Just avoid the last door on the left, his voice barely above a whisper. Intrigue sparked within her, urging her to uncover the forbidden. That fateful night, amidst the shadows of the hallway, she halted before the enigmatic door. The handle chilled her fingertips, the door blending seamlessly with its companions until she leaned in, listening intently. A whisper of breath, haunting and unseen, escaped from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed yawned away weariness, slipping under the caution tape marking the scene. The metallic tang of blood assaulted her senses, a sensation all too familiar. Stains marred the carpet, a stark contrast to the untouched surroundings. Amidst the chaos, a young woman lay lifeless, her golden locks splayed like a halo. Her vacant gaze met the ceiling, frozen in a silent scream. Reed knelt by the victim, mindful of the evidence markers scattered around. Third one this season, the forensic technician remarked, his tone devoid of emotion as he captured the grim scene. Same pattern as before, Reed nodded solemnly. The victim's elegance clashed with the motel's neglect. An open handbag revealed no theft, no robbery motive, only a deeper, darker purpose. The hotel manager lingered anxiously, his pallor betraying his shock. She arrived alone, paid in cash. I never imagined, his voice faltered. The maid stumbled upon her during routine cleaning. Reed surveyed the room, noting the absence of forced entry or defensive wounds. The killer had been welcomed or already known to the victim. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned photos on the board, a trio of women bound by tragedy in obscure motels. Speculation swirled, whispers of a serial presence haunting the shadows. Autopsy results are in, Detective Hayes declared, dropping a file on Reed's desk. Death by manual strangulation. No trace of DNA under the victim's nails. No signs of assault. Reed furrowed her brow. This was no random act. It bore the weight of personal vendetta. Days melded into nights as the investigation deepened, surveillance yielding no breakthroughs. Elaine Werner, the victim, a meticulous financial analyst with no apparent enemies, defied the narrative of her demise. A pivotal light emerged during a meeting with Werner's sister. She spoke of a man from work, the sister confessed, hands trembling. Mysterious, possibly married. Reed leaned forward. Did she mention a name? Just see, that's all she shared. The focus shifted to Werner's workplace, where colleagues painted her as reserved, enigmatic. A business card tucked in her desk led Reed to Charles Emerson, senior vice president. Emerson exuded charm and innocence, yet Reed sensed a shadow lurking beneath the facade. Did you have a personal relationship with Elaine Werner? Reed probed casually. A flicker of unease crossed Emerson's face, fleeting but telling. Purely professional, he insisted. Forensics intertwined Werner's handbag with Emerson's prints, unraveling a web of deceit. We were involved, Emerson confessed, his veneer cracking. But it was over. She threatened to expose me. Enough to end a life, Reed's gaze held his. Emerson's denial faltered in the face of damning evidence: a concealed camera, fibers, DNA. His orchestrated encounters with women resembling his wife, the meticulous recordings, the calculated eliminations, all laid bare. In the interrogation room, Emerson's facade crumbled. They posed a threat to everything, he whispered. My reputation, my marriage, my existence. The trial unfolded swiftly, a spectacle of justice witnessed by grieving families. Emerson's stoic demeanor never wavered, a mask of indifference shielding his true nature. Life without parole awaited him, a fitting end to his reign of terror. As he departed, Reed caught his gaze, glimpsing not remorse, but a chilling void where empathy should reside. The media dubbed it the door on the left case, a canvas for psychologists and enthusiasts alike. Yet for Reed, closure remained elusive. Amidst hotel corridors, she counted doors, pondering the untold mysteries within. Nestled in the evidence vault, 3 identical keys bore witness to the unforgotten, past a reminder that some doors once opened echo with secrets that can never be silenced. Story 19. The dwelling lay silent for years, untouched by life since the vanishing of a young woman. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of her disappearance, a mystery unsolved. Yet when the new occupants crossed the threshold, a peculiar discovery awaited them. The bedroom, sealed shut, held secrets within its walls. With effort they forced entry, greeted by a stagnant atmosphere heavy with neglect, but an unsettling aura lingered. The bed, immaculately made, the mirror devoid of smudges. And upon the desk, a lone candle, its essence extinguished, leaving behind hardened tears of wax. Amidst this eerie tableau, a notebook lay open, its pages adorned with fresh ink. Detective Morgan pored over the entries within, while forensic experts meticulously combed the room for traces of the past. The script within belonged to Elise Winters, a woman of 26, reported missing half a decade prior. Her handwriting, meticulous and precise, unfurled across the pages, each stroke a testament to a mind in turmoil. But the final entry bore a weight, the ink pressed deep, leaving imprints on blank canvases. I know he's watching me tonight, the chilling words echoed from the page. The car passes, a harbinger of shadows. My cries for aid fall on deaf ears. If fate befalls me, know it was not by chance. The detective closed the notebook, securing it within an evidence sheath. A lingering scent, a blend of dust and a subtle chemical tang, clung to the air. The landlord, a figure of unease, hovered in the threshold, his demeanor pallid. We searched every corner ere listing it for rent, he murmured. That door should not have been locked. Elise, a paralegal at Harriman and Associates, a venerable legal entity embroiled in corporate intrigue, had unraveled a thread that led to her vanishing. Colleagues spoke of her meticulous nature, her dedication, but also of a gradual withdrawal in the days preceding her disappearance. Late nights in the office, her superior recounted. Whispers of discrepancies in the Westridge files, anomalies that demanded scrutiny. The detective studied photographs of Elise, a woman of poise and intellect, her auburn locks framing eyes of solemnity. A woman too composed to vanish without a trace, too methodical to abandon her life's work. The chamber held scant clues, no signs of struggle, no crimson stains. It stood frozen in time, a fragment of existence untouched by the passage of years. Beneath the cold gaze of the unscented candle, a revelation awaited. The forensic light unveiled a peculiar discovery. A myriad of fingerprints, aged and weathered, yet the notable absence is telling. The doorknob pristine, the window latches devoid of prints. The team delved deeper, uncovering a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard. Within, a waterproof case safeguarded a flash drive and a key. The key unveiled a vault of secrets at Northern Trust Bank. Within, a second drive and documents detailing financial dealings between Westridge Pharmaceuticals and shadowy accounts linked to Harriman and Associates. The digital trove exposed a web of deceit, showcasing manipulated data on Neurapax, Westridge's flagship drug. Recordings of Elise and a man identified as Vincent Harriman unraveled a tale of duplicity and betrayal. As the truth unfurled, pharmaceutical regulators affirmed the withdrawal of Neurapax from shelves, a consequence of Elise's revelations. Harriman, shielded by wealth and influence, found his fortress crumbling. Charges for a clandestine cleaning service at his retreat, coupled with traces of Elise's essence, painted a damning portrait. The enigma of the locked chamber persisted until surveillance footage shed light on the shadows. Harriman, a figure of malevolence, breached the sanctum on the fateful night, only to vanish without a trace, or so it seemed. Detective Morgan, guided by intuition, unearthed a concealed passage within the recesses of the closet, a portal to hidden tunnels beneath the aged abodes. Harriman's downfall came amidst a boardroom upheaval, his protestations of innocence drowned by the weight of evidence. A hidden camera, a silent witness to his deeds, captured the final moments of Elise's existence. Justice, a phantom long awaited, materialized in the damning footage. The courtroom bore witness to Harriman's fall from grace, the echoes of Elise's voice resonating in the hallowed halls of justice. Her mother, a beacon of strength, spoke of her daughter's legacy, a truth safeguarded within the confines of a room frozen in time. The house, a relic of sorrow and secrets, loomed empty once more, a testament to the unseen forces at play. Whispers of a spectral light flickering in the upper chamber persisted, a reminder of a soul unwilling to be silenced. Elise Winters, a guardian of truth in life and beyond, found vindication in the echoes of her final testimony. Story 20. The tale began with the new owners, who brushed off the crackling of the old intercom system as a quirky charm of the Victorian manor they now called home. Daniel and Meredith Parker found solace in the historic beauty of the house, despite the unsettling late-night whispers that occasionally permeated through the speakers. One fateful evening, curiosity got the best of Daniel, and he pressed the intercom button, unwittingly inviting a haunting question into their lives. "Why did you come back?" Startled, he turned to his wife, only to find her denying ever uttering those words. The manor, shrouded in mystery and surrounded by ancient oak trees, held secrets long forgotten. The real estate agent's unease during the walkthrough hinted at something more beneath the surface, a feeling that Detective Sarah Reeves couldn't shake when she arrived in response to a potential break-in call. Daniel led Detective Reeves through the grand foyer, recounting the strange occurrences that had escalated from static to eerie whispers and full sentences emanating from the intercom. Meredith sat stiffly in the living room, gripping a mug as she revealed a shocking discovery hidden behind a wall, a leather-bound journal belonging to Alina, the previous owner, detailing her fears of harm from her husband Vincent. As the investigation unfolded, the truth of Alina's fate slowly unraveled. Beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation lay the remains of a woman, confirming Alina's tragic end at the hands of Vincent. The inscription on a wedding band found with the bones spoke of eternal love, a stark contrast to the heinous crime committed. Vincent's calculated deception and chilling confession painted a picture of a man consumed by silence, driven to extremes to silence his wife's presence even in death. The trial brought closure, but the house still whispered its secrets, a reminder of the darkness that had once lurked within its walls. After selling the property, Daniel and Meredith bid farewell to the house with a solemn memorial for Alina, honoring her memory and the truth that had come to light. The intercom, a relic of the past, was removed by the new owners during renovations, silencing the echoes of the past that lingered within its wires. Detective Reeves, haunted by the case, would pass by the house on her way home, the wind sometimes carrying phantom whispers that only she seemed to hear. The house, now devoid of its dark secrets, stood as a silent sentinel, a testament to the enduring power of voices long silenced but never forgotten. Story 21. The apartment exuded an air of age, its walls holding secrets whispered through the years. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, a symphony of murmurs that blended into the fabric of the building. She, a tenant in the old structure, dismissed these sounds as commonplace, just the building settling into its bones, until one night a voice, faint yet unmistakable, drifted through the vents like a ghostly echo. It wasn't the typical noise of a neighbor's conversation or a passing car outside. It was a whisper calling her name with a haunting urgency. Intrigued and unnerved, she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart quickening its pace in anticipation. A rush of icy air caressed her cheek, sending shivers down her spine, and then almost teasingly the voice spoke again, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw, a figure of stoic resolve, found herself in the heart of the empty apartment, surrounded by the meticulous work of the forensics team. Cameras clicked and flashed, freezing moments in time as they documented the scene before them. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence unnoticed until the stale odor of decay crept through the building. Officer Patel, with a furrowed brow, read aloud from his notepad about Alina's claims of voices seeping through the vents, her pleas dismissed as the ramblings of an overactive imagination. Shaw, kneeling beside the vent, traced her fingers along the scratch marks etched into the metal, a silent testament to a struggle unseen. The picture of Alina began to take shape. Kindergarten teacher, beloved by her students, her life reduced to a memory etched in the minds of those who knew her. Her sister's trembling voice revealed a tale of escalating paranoia, of a sister convinced of unseen eyes watching her every move, whispering through the very walls of her sanctuary. Examining the apartment with a newfound clarity, Shaw pieced together fragments of a puzzle long hidden in plain sight. The bed meticulously made, the coffee mug abandoned in the sink, the chair positioned beneath the vent, a silent sentinel to a presence unseen but felt. The forensics report, a mosaic of evidence, painted a chilling portrait. fibers intertwined with the grating matching Aliner's favorite cardigan, a foreign fingerprint, a trespasser's mark etched on the inside of the vent cover, and then the haunting audio recordings retrieved from Aliner's phone, a window into a world of whispers and shadows. The building, a silent witness to decades of lives intertwined, harbored a dark history. Tenants came and went, fleeing in haste, their stories buried beneath layers of dust and neglect. One spoke of voices in the night, another of hallucinations born of unseen terrors lurking within the walls. Harold Weber, the custodian of secrets, his calm fa-deck cracking under the weight of Shaw's scrutiny. His eyes, windows to a soul tainted by shadows, revealed glimpses of a truth long buried. The questions hung heavy in the air, unspoken yet deafening in their silence. As the investigation unfurled, a hidden passage unveiled itself, a gateway to a realm unseen yet palpable. A world between walls, a sanctuary for a voyeur unseen, a whisperer of dark promises. Shaw's pursuit led to Weber's door, behind which lay a truth too sinister to comprehend. Within the walls of Weber's immaculate abode lay a trove of horrors, a digital archive of stolen moments, a gallery of violated privacy, a testament to a mind unhinged. His voice, a siren's call to the unsuspecting, lured them into a nightmare from which there was no awakening. The arrest, a moment frozen in time, painted a portrait of a man consumed by his delusions, a puppeteer orchestrating a macabre symphony of fear. His words, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked within the shadows of the building, echoed through the corridors of justice. Aliner's fate, a tragedy written in whispers, echoed through the halls of justice, a requiem for a life stolen by the darkness within. The families of the forgotten victims emerged from the shadows, their voices united in a chorus of grief and anger, their stories woven into the fabric of a nightmare long ignored. Weber's trial, a theater of the macabre, played out with a grim finality. His defense crumbled beneath the weight of evidence, his delusions shattered by the cold light of truth. The verdict, a vindication for the lost souls who had fallen prey to his twisted fantasies. As Weber was led away, a specter of his own making, his words lingered in the air like a haunting melody. The building, a silent sentinel to his crimes, whispered its own judgment, a chorus of voices lost to the darkness. The apartment building, now a mausoleum of memories, stood silent and empty, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. Residents came and went, their lives intertwined with the shadows that lurked within. The building groaned, the pipes rattled, a symphony of secrets that refused to be silenced. And so the building stood, a monument to the darkness that dwelled within its walls, a testament to the whispers that lingered in the stillness of the night. Story 22. In the stillness of the night, a tale unraveled within the walls of a Victorian-era home owned by Michael and Sarah Klein. What began as a simple renovation project turned into a journey through layers of time and secrets veiled beneath peeling wallpaper. The house, with its ornate woodwork and high ceilings, seemed to whisper stories of days long past, drawing the couple in with its old-world charm. Little did they know that hidden beneath the layers of history lay a mystery waiting to be uncovered. It all started with a water stain in the master bedroom, a subtle blemish on the floral wallpaper that caught Sarah's eye. As they peeled back the layers, a name emerged like a ghost from the past Aliner winters, scrawled in ink over and over, a haunting presence on the walls. Who was Aliner Winters? The question lingered in the air, weaving a web of intrigue around the unsuspecting couple. With each layer they uncovered, the mystery deepened, leading them down a path they never could have imagined. Late into the night, bathed in the soft glow of their laptop screen, Michael and Sarah delved into the archives, searching for answers that seemed to elude them. The name Alina Winters appeared in a decades-old missing persons case, her dark eyes staring out from a faded photograph, bearing an uncanny resemblance to the woman who had sold them the house. As they dug deeper, the lines between past and present blurred, intertwining the fates of Alina Winters and Margaret Cavendish, the enigmatic seller of the house. The more they uncovered, the more the mystery seemed to entwine itself around their lives, drawing them further into its enigmatic web. Their nights became consumed with unraveling the threads of the past, tracing the footsteps of those who had walked the halls before them. Each discovery led to new revelations, each clue a stepping stone towards the truth that lay shrouded in darkness. And then a breakthrough, a hidden space beneath the floorboards revealed a trove of secrets, identities intertwined in a complex dance of deception. The truth, when it finally emerged, shattered their perceptions, revealing a story more chilling than they could have ever imagined. The walls of their home, once silent witnesses to the unfolding drama, now spoke volumes of a fractured mind, a desperate struggle for identity lost in the mists of time. As the investigation unfolded, truths long buried came to light, painting a portrait of a woman consumed by her own delusions. And so, as the sun rose over the horizon, casting long shadows across the garden where the remains of Alina Winters were discovered, Michael and Sarah stood witness to a tale of tragedy and deception that had unfolded within the very walls of their home. The house, once a haven of dreams, now bore the weight of a dark legacy, a reminder that some secrets are buried so deep they can only be unearthed by those brave enough to seek the truth. And as the winds whispered through the ancient trees, carrying echoes of the past, the house stood silent, a sentinel guarding the memories etched into its very foundation. Story 23. It drifted to her doorstep, nestled in an unassuming envelope devoid of any sender's mark. A solitary brass key, weathered by the passage of time. The homeowner, Sarah, couldn't place it, yet an inexplicable sense of déjà vu washed over her as she held it in her palm. Testing it in every lock she possessed yielded no results. It didn't belong to her domain. But when she set it delicately on the coffee table, the antique grandfather clock stationed in the hallway emitted a solitary, eerie chime, despite its long-standing silence. Intrigued and unnerved, Sarah Miller promptly notified the authorities of the peculiar incident that unfolded upon discovering the enigmatic key. What commenced as an oddity swiftly unraveled into the most unsettling criminal inquiry the tranquil suburban enclave had ever encountered. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer attempted to downplay Sarah's concerns, attributing the key's arrival to a possible mistake. However, Sarah's intuition refused to be silenced. A disquieting feeling lingered in the air. Consequently, the officer accepted the key as potential evidence, depositing it into a diminutive evidence pouch, an action more to pacify Sarah than out of genuine conviction, a decision that would propel a far-reaching investigation. At the break of dawn, Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator within the Special Victims Unit, was handed the case dossier. Known for his knack to discern cases destined to transcend their innocuous beginnings, the brass key sat upon his desk, unassuming yet disquieting. Background scrutiny unveiled Sarah's pristine record devoid of any criminal entanglements. A retired high school English instructor, widowed, with grown children scattered across the nation. Financial audits, call logs, and social media perusal unveiled nothing untoward. She seemed precisely as she professed an unwitting recipient of a mysterious item. Forensic examination unearthed solely Sarah's fingerprints on the key. The envelope divulged no clues save for a generic postmark from the regional distribution hub. No DNA traces, no residual evidence. The key itself, a standard Schlage model, well-worn and bearing the marks of time. A breakthrough materialized unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to cross-reference the key's distinctive bidding pattern within the department database. A dormant case from 7 years prior documented an identical key profile linked to a storage unit yielding blood-stained carpet, tools of severance, and portraits of unidentified women. The initial inquiry had hit a standstill due to insufficient evidence to unmask a suspect. Dusting off the antiquated case files, Harmon discovered the original investigator had since retired. The storage unit had been leased under a false identity, payments made in cash. Surveillance tapes had been overwritten long ago. The amassed evidence had procured partial DNA samples, yet no matches within the criminal archives. The images salvaged from the storage unit depicted 5 women, all appearing in a state of unconsciousness. Merely 3 had been identified during the initial probe, all reported missing, but never located cases left unresolved, classified as suspected homicides sans bodies. Upon viewing the photos, Sarah recognized none of the women, her perturbation mounting as the investigation unfurled. Amidst escalating unease, she fortified her abode with new locks and a security apparatus. The looming question persisted: why her? Why the bestowal of this key? Harmon sanctioned a fresh evaluation of the original evidence employing contemporary techniques. The partial DNA specimen was expanded and sifted through genealogical repositories, yielding a distant kinship match, a second cousin twice removed from the prime suspect. Tracing backward through kin networks, investigators honed in on Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor who had resided 2 streets away from Sarah until his departure some 6 years past, his current whereabouts shrouded in mystery. Scrutiny divulged Jenkins had been a substitute teacher at Sarah's school, though their documented interaction was minimal. His labor records unveiled sporadic employment history, prolonged gaps sans explanation, and recurrent relocations. A search of his prior abode unveiled no anomalies. Neighbors depicted him as unassuming, reclusive, a familiar portrayal that often tales revelations of predators camouflaged in plain sight. The paramount question lingered: why this key, and why now to Sarah Miller? Harmon speculated it could serve as a trophy, a forewarning, or perhaps a grim invitation. The pursuit of Jenkins intensified. His license lay dormant, no credit transactions, no tax filings. The digital imprints individuals customarily leave behind were conspicuously absent, hinting at a deliberate evasion to remain untraceable. The true horror of the case unfurled as authorities scrutinized a diminutive cabin registered in Jenkins' deceased mother's name. Beneath the time-worn floorboards, investigators unearthed a hidden chamber accessible solely through a concealed hatch. Within, meticulously arranged shelves cradled numerous brass keys, each affixed with a tag bearing a name and date. 5 keys corresponded to the women in the photographs, the remainder 27 in total, proposing a harrowing notion of additional victims unbeknownst to the authorities. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams exhumed human remains. The excavation spanned weeks, uncovering multiple bodies in varying stages of decay. Sarah found herself under constant surveillance as the nationwide manhunt for Jenkins burgeoned. Behavioral analysts surmised the key signified a twisted overture, Jenkins selecting Sarah to appreciate his artistry. Dubbed the Keymaster by the media, fear pervaded the community as residents grappled with the realization of such horrors existing among them undetected. Tracking dogs picked up a trail from the cabin, leading into the surrounding wilderness. Search parties combed dense woodland areas, and thermal drones scanned inaccessible terrains. The manhunt evolved into one of the region's most extensive pursuits. A wildlife photographer traversing remote woods captured an image resembling Jenkins, a bearded figure with vacant eyes, carrying a backpack, venturing further into the wilderness. Authorities converged on the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical squads navigated treacherous landscapes, while profilers anticipated Jenkins' reluctance to surrender, prepping for hidden caches and escape routes. The final standoff unfolded when an officer stumbled upon Jenkins attempting to ford a river. Rather than capitulate, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, barricading himself within an abandoned fire observation tower. Hours of negotiation bore no fruit as Jenkins maintained his silence. When tactical units finally breached the tower, they found Jenkins lifeless from self-inflicted wounds. Beside him lay a journal chronicling his atrocities, alongside a brass key identical to Sarah's. Enclosed in a waterproof vessel, investigators unearthed further evidence: photographs, burial site coordinates, and mementos taken from victims, a meticulously preserved chronicle of malevolence spanning nearly a decade. The journal's concluding entry addressed Sarah directly. "You never saw me, but I saw everything about you. The key opens not, for what I wish to give you is unlocked solely through recognition. Now all will recall my name." Subsequent scrutiny identified a total of 32 victims. Families long haunted by vanished loved ones finally found closure, albeit overshadowed by the weight of confirmed calamity. Sarah never returned to her abode, unable to reconcile the proximity of horror to her once ordinary life. Examination of the grandfather clock, which had ominously chimed, uncovered a concealed wireless transmitter Jenkins had been observing, awaiting the moment she received his gift. The case remains a chilling exemplar of predatory malevolence veiled behind commonplace exteriors. Psychological researchers continue poring over Jenkins' writings, striving to unearth insights to identify akin offenders preemptively. And somewhere in a secure repository, a cache of brass keys bears silent testament to lives snuffed out, each key unlocking nothing tangible, yet exposing a harrowing verity about the shadows that sometimes lurk behind unremarkable facades. Story 24. In the stillness of the night, the wooden plank yielded beneath her foot, a subtle shift that beckoned her curiosity. She paused, her senses heightened, and knelt down to inspect the unexpected gap. The floor, once seemingly solid, now whispered of secrets concealed beneath its surface. With delicate fingers, she pried up the boards, unveiling a dark, clandestine space that had long evaded detection. Dust danced in the dim light, cobwebs clinging to the shadows, yet amidst the quiet desolation, something beckoned her gaze. A mattress, a chair, and in the shadows, a worn notebook filled with pages bearing the repetition of a single name, her name. Sarah Coleman stood frozen, her eyes fixed upon the hidden chamber beneath her newfound sanctuary. Detective Morgan Reed observed from behind, a silent sentinel in the face of Sarah's silent dread. The revelation transcended mere discovery. It spoke of intrusion, of a violation that tainted what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Do not disturb anything," Detective Reed's voice, calm yet resolute, broke the silence. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating walls adorned with a mosaic of surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move, her every interaction. A shrine of obsession that had thrived unbeknownst to her. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of Walter Green, an enigmatic recluse whose passing left no heirs. The property, vacant for months, had beckoned with promises of charm and minor renovations, concealing its dark underbelly from prying eyes. "I never met him, the previous owner," Sarah's voice wavered. The neighbors spoke of his reclusiveness. The basement access was supposed to be sealed off. The inspection report said as much. As crime scene investigators descended, their presence a solemn echo against the wooden floors, they meticulously documented every detail of the hidden chamber. The mattress, the chair, the notebook all bore the fingerprints of Walter Green, a man who had watched Sarah in silence for years. The timeline, a chilling mosaic of obsession, unfurled before the investigators. Utility records, dated photographs, they painted a portrait of a man who had shadowed Sarah's every step, unseen and unnoticed. The fixation it escalates, the department psychologist mused. From fantasy to reality, the hidden room, a harbinger of intentions yet unfulfilled. Detective Reed's inquiry led her to Walter's former colleague, a man haunted by the weight of his revelation. He spoke of her sometimes, the man confessed, his gaze averted, said she reminded him of someone I never thought. A warrant unearthed a key, a portal to a storage unit housing a chilling replication of Sarah's former life furniture mirroring her own, a mannequin bearing her likeness. A calendar marked with a date, a promise of togetherness that lingered in the silence. Walter's history unveiled a past plagued by obsessions, an institutionalization steeped in delusions of affection. Sarah, unknowing catalyst to his dormant desires, stood at the precipice of a nightmare she had never imagined. As the case concluded, Sarah made a choice to sever ties with the house that harbored shadows of the past. Detective Reed, a silent guardian, observed from afar, a reminder of the fragility of safety. The cottage found new occupants, unaware of the whispers that lingered beneath the floorboards. The hidden room, now sealed, bore witness to a tale of darkness that had been silenced but not forgotten. Life carried on, yet for those privy to the truth, the room beneath the floor remained a haunting reminder of the unseen perils that awaited, the monsters that slumbered, and the victims who narrowly escaped their fates. Story 25. The tale begins in a quaint costume shop, its shelves barren as it prepared to close its doors for good. Among the remnants of forgotten treasures, a woman stumbled upon a mask resting on a dusty shelf like a relic of forgotten dreams. Its delicate features held a strange allure, almost too lifelike in their unsettling beauty. As she placed it on the counter to purchase, the cashier's hesitation was palpable. "That's not ours," he mumbled, a shadow of unease crossing his face. Perplexed, the woman inspected the mask, only to find it devoid of any identifying tag. Shaking off the strange encounter, she decided to take it home with her. That fateful night, a soft sound stirred her from slumber, a whisper of fabric shifting, barely audible yet undeniably present. Her heart raced as she reached for the bedside lamp, illuminating the darkness. The mask was no longer where she had left it on the dresser. Instead, it sat on her nightstand, facing her with an eerie stillness that sent shivers down her spine. The woman, known as Catherine Reed, would be discovered the following morning by a concerned neighbor. The front door stood ajar, allowing a sliver of morning light to pierce the darkness that enveloped the home. The neighbor, arriving to return a borrowed book, stumbled upon a scene that would haunt the investigators for years to come. Catherine's lifeless form lay on the bedroom floor, the mysterious mask nowhere to be found. Detective Morgan arrived at the scene as forensics meticulously documented every detail. The rhythmic click of shutters echoed in the somber room, a backdrop to the hushed voices exchanging theories and observations. "No signs of forced entry," remarked an officer, his pen scratching against the notepad. The detective's sharp eyes scanned the room, absorbing every nuance with a keen intuition. A partially open drawer, a lipstick-stained water glass, mundane details that whispered of a life abruptly cut short. The medical examiner's solemn face betrayed the mystery that shrouded Catherine's death. Cause of death unclear at first glance. "No outward wounds, no trace of a struggle," he announced, gesturing towards her frozen expression of terror. Detective Morgan knelt beside the body, her breath catching at the realization. "Something frightened her to the core," she murmured, a chill creeping down her spine. Catherine, an unassuming art appraiser in her waking hours, was known for her discerning eye and unwavering dedication to authenticity. Colleagues spoke of her keen ability to spot a forgery with a single glance, a talent that had earned her respect in the art world. The detective pondered whether this keen perception had inadvertently led to her tragic demise. A pivotal clue emerged from security footage obtained from the costume shop. The cashier's genuine bewilderment at the sight of the mask raised more questions than answers. Consultations with lip-reading experts confirmed his cryptic words, "We never stocked anything like this." A visit to the now vacant shop unraveled a tale of inexplicable occurrences linked to a collector's estate sale, shrouded in tragedy and whispers of the supernatural. Forensics provided a breakthrough with the discovery of microscopic fibers clutched in Catherine's lifeless hand. The lab technician's explanation hinted at an otherworldly origin, a blend of human hair and an enigmatic organic substance defying identification. Each fiber wove a thread connecting Catherine to a legacy of inexplicable deaths spanning decades, each victim bearing the mask's silent witness of terror. A retired detective, a veteran of a similar case from the past, shed light on the enigma. In a dimly lit room, he revealed a yellowed file containing a chilling revelation, ancient symbols hidden within the masks, hinting at a macabre ritual of soul transference. A journal clandestinely tucked away in Catherine's apartment unveiled her descent into terror, recounting her battle against an unseen malevolence that lurked within the mask's haunting gaze. As the pieces of the puzzle converged, the cause of Catherine's demise was unveiled, a fatal heart stoppage induced by sheer terror. What unseen horror could provoke such a profound reaction, freezing her in a final, anguished expression? The investigation took a sinister turn with the discovery of surveillance footage capturing a figure cloaked in darkness, wearing a mask akin to Catherine's haunting visage. A haunting mimicry of her movements, devoid of humanity, suggested a chilling truth: the mask's insidious power to wear its victims as vessels for an ancient entity hungry for souls. Despite the detective's relentless pursuit, the elusive mask vanished, only to resurface months later in a distant vintage shop, slipping through the hands of fate once more. Its enigmatic buyer remained a mystery, leaving the case officially unsolved, a chilling reminder of a truth too bizarre for conventional explanation. Catherine's journal now rests in the detective's drawer, a silent testament to the cyclical horror that lurks in the shadows. In the stillness of night, she awakens to a sense of unseen eyes upon her, a lingering specter of dread that whispers of the mask's relentless quest for a new host. The cycle continues, a dark legacy that stretches across time, waiting for the next unwitting soul to cross its path. Story 26. In the hushed stillness of the night, a pocket dial pierced the silence, a mere echo of static and muffled whispers. The operator, on the brink of dismissing the call as a fluke, hesitated as a voice broke through the garbled noise. A woman's urgent whisper sent shivers down their spine. "He's here." And then an eerie silence enveloped the line, leaving behind a chilling void. The mysterious number traced back to an empty house, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past, abandoned and forgotten for years. No signs of intrusion marred the tranquil facade, no disturbances to disrupt the thick layer of dust that cloaked the forgotten memories. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, a solitary phone perched on the counter, its screen casting an ethereal glow in the darkness. The call had been placed mere minutes ago, a ghostly echo from a realm beyond. Detective Morgan Reed, with furrowed brows and a mind plagued by questions, pressed the playback button repeatedly, each repetition deepening the mystery that clung to the whisper, desperate, fearful, and inexplicable. The property, once home to the Sullivan family before tragedy befell them in the form of a raging inferno that devoured the West Wing, stood as a silent witness to the enigma unfolding within its walls. No soul had inhabited its spaces since the Sullivans departed, leaving only whispers in their wake. Background check on the number. Morgan's inquiry hung in the air, a thread connecting the present to a past veiled in shadows. Her partner, Detective Walsh, unraveled the tangled web of connections, revealing that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the daughter who had met her untimely end in a tragic car accident 3 years prior. The weight of the revelation settled heavily upon Morgan's shoulders, the pieces of the puzzle refusing to fit together in any logical manner. The abandoned phone, a relic of the past reaching out from the depths of obscurity, posed a conundrum that defied reason. The forensic team's meticulous search yielded no tangible leads, no fingerprints but faint smudges that eluded identification. The very air seemed to whisper of secrets long buried, of a presence that lingered unseen. The recording, a mere 11 seconds encapsulating a lifetime of dread, became the focal point of their investigation, the static hum, the rhythmic breathing, and the haunting words that reverberated through the void. Voice analysis, with eerie precision, confirmed the identity of the speaker as Catherine Sullivan, her voice echoing from the past with a haunting familiarity, a spectral presence refusing to be silenced. Morgan and Walsh delved deeper, peeling back the layers of time to unravel the truth that lay dormant in the shadows. Interviews with those who had known Catherine unveiled a tapestry of emotions, grief, bewilderment, and a gnawing sense of unfinished business. Her father, now remarried, stood at the edge of a mystery he could not comprehend. Her mother, a solitary figure in a world haunted by memories, clung to the echoes of her daughter's voice, a lifeline to a past she could not relinquish. The specter of Catherine's former boyfriend, Mark Jennings, loomed large in their investigation, his alibi a fragile shield against the accusations that loomed on the horizon. The house, a silent sentinel in the night, held its secrets close, refusing to yield to the probing gaze of the detectives. And then a breakthrough, a call from Catherine's mother, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and revelation. In the dusty pages of a journal hidden among Catherine's belongings, a tale of love turned sour unfurled a narrative of control, isolation, and ultimately terror. The final entry, a harbinger of doom, spoke of impending danger, of a threat looming on the horizon. Confronted once more, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of evidence, his protestations ringing hollow in the face of the truth that lay exposed. The journal, a damning testimony to a life cut short, laid bare the darkness that had lurked beneath the surface, hidden from prying eyes. A revisit to the scene of the accident unearthed a chilling revelation, a buried phone, silenced and forgotten, its secrets buried with its owner. Forensic scrutiny peeled back the layers of deception, revealing a sinister truth hidden in plain sight. Deleted texts, a trail of breadcrumbs leading to an inevitable conclusion, painted a picture of betrayal and malice. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, a portrait of evil emerged, a man driven by obsession, consumed by a desire to control even in death. Mark's arrest, a moment of reckoning long overdue, marked the end of a chapter stained with blood and deceit. The trial, a spectacle of justice unfolding in a hushed courtroom, delivered its verdict swiftly guilty of first-degree murder. And as the gavel fell, a sense of closure descended upon the room, a bittersweet symphony of justice served and lives forever altered. The phone from the abandoned house now rests in the evidence locker, a silent sentinel to a tale of darkness and light, of voices lost and found. And in the quiet of the night, some swear they hear it ring, a faint echo of a past that refuses to be forgotten, a reminder that even in death, the voices of the silenced will find a way to be heard. Story 27, The Enigmatic Victorian House. She crossed the threshold, the dust dancing in the stillness of the abandoned house. Years of neglect had left their mark, peeling walls, furniture cloaked in sheets. It was a place frozen in time except for one peculiar aspect, the doors. Each one she opened led her back to the same room, trapping her in a perplexing loop. No matter her path, no matter the handle turned, she always returned to the parlor. The only escape seemed to be the way she had entered. But when she looked back, the front door had vanished. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form had transformed the once forgotten Victorian into a scene of intrigue and darkness. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as forensic experts moved through the dimness like specters. The house had garnered a reputation among locals, a place where compasses spun wildly, where whispers of being watched lingered. Now it held secrets far beyond mere tales. The initial examination suggests she passed about 3 days ago, the medical examiner murmured. Asphyxiation appears to be the cause of death. Morgan had been found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her gaze fixed on the entrance as though awaiting someone, her expression serene, hands folded neatly. No signs of struggle, no marks of defense. The scene exuded a chilling stillness that unsettled even the seasoned investigators. Who discovered the body? Lind inquired, sifting through her notes. A real estate agent showing the property to potential buyers, her partner replied. They stumbled upon her seated there, mistaking her for a trespasser until they drew closer. The house had stood empty since the passing of its previous owner, Eleanor Blackwood, nearly 5 years prior. Legal disputes had left it abandoned, unwanted, forgotten save for the occasional vandal or thrill seeker. Morgan Pierce, a 26-year-old graduate student, was known for her research on peculiar architectural anomalies. Her friends described her as meticulous, driven, drawn to spaces defying traditional design. Her roommate reported her missing 2 days back, Lind noted. Morgan mentioned visiting the house where people get lost for her studies. Investigations unveiled Morgan's frequent visits to the house leading up to her demise. Her journal entries detailed odd acoustics, unexplained cold spots, and doors shifting to reveal different rooms. In her final scribbles, she spoke of bringing specialized tools to document what she called spatial anomalies. Yet those tools were nowhere to be found. The autopsy uncovered a surprising detail, traces of a rare alkaloid in Morgan's system, derived from a plant linked to shamanic practices. Though capable of inducing disorientation and vivid visions, the substance found was insufficiently potent to be lethal. She didn't use drugs recreationally, her boyfriend asserted during questioning. Morgan adhered strictly to her research ethics. She wouldn't have compromised her perception willingly. Deleted messages on Morgan's phone unveiled conversations with a kindred spirit captivated by the house's mysteries. Their exchanges grew intimate and enigmatic. The house holds memories, one message hinted. It yearns for someone to understand. The investigation led Lynn to Adam Reeves, an architectural historian who had corresponded with Morgan. His expertise in rare spatial phenomena had drawn her interest, evolving their professional rapport into a personal connection. Reeves, when interrogated, appeared genuinely shaken by her passing. "The house has a reputation," he divulged. "The original architect wove optical illusions and false perspectives into its design. It was meant to disorient." Morgan believed there was more to it, something beyond mere tricks of construction. Yet Reeves had a solid alibi for the estimated time of Morgan's demise, confirmed by university symposium footage placing him hours away. A breakthrough arrived from an unexpected source, Alina Blackwood's grandson, now residing overseas. Contacted by the investigators, he disclosed a family secret concealed for generations. "My grandmother wasn't the sole Blackwood to perish in that house," he shared. "Others met their end there, always found in the parlor, always at peace. The family called it the claiming." He handed over journals spanning decades, chronicling deaths initially attributed to natural causes. A pattern emerged: those spending time within the house ultimately succumbed to what the family cryptically termed the influence. A secondary search unveiled a hidden compartment behind the parlor's fireplace. Inside lay Morgan's missing equipment alongside a peculiar discovery. A small chamber held artifacts from various indigenous cultures, arranged meticulously. At its heart sat a weathered figurine embodying a deity linked to liminal spaces, thresholds between realms. Residue on the relics mirrored the alkaloid in Morgan's system. The investigation took a new twist as dust patterns hinted at another's presence during Morgan's passing. Unfamiliar fingerprints adorned doorknobs throughout the house, distinct from Morgan's or any known visitor's prints. 3 weeks into the inquiry, Adam Reeves was found deceased in his abode. Like Morgan, he was seated near the entrance, a tranquil expression on his face, the same alkaloid detected in his system. Clutched in his hand was a key that fit no lock in his apartment, but aligned perfectly with the concealed compartment in the Victorian. In his final missive, preserved as if a testament, Reeves penned, "The house doesn't ensnare you physically, it captivates your perception." Morgan was onto something. The doors led where they always have, yet something distorts your sense of direction. Once you grasp the truth, you can depart at will, but by then, you no longer desire to. The case remains open, listed as suspicious deaths under scrutiny. The Victorian has since been condemned, its access barred by authorities. Nonetheless, whispers persist of flickering lights seen on certain nights and of visitors who vanish within. Some locals claim the house claims those who delve too deeply into its enigmas. Others posit that Morgan and Reeves unraveled a potent, ancient secret residing in the interstices of reality. The truth lingers as elusive as an exit in a house where all doors lead back to the starting point.